I'd like to call this meeting to order. This meeting of the Anchorage Assembly, January 13, 2015. Madam Clerk, please do the roll call.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Ms. Tomboski.
Present.
Mr. Steele.
Here.
Mr. Starr. Mr. Starr is out of the room right now. Mr. Flynn.
Present.
Mr. Hall.
Present.
Ms. Gray Jackson.
Honored to be here.
Ms. Johnston. Ms. Honeman. Mr. Honeman. Mr. Honeman was planning to join on the telephone but hasn't joined us yet. Mr. Trainee.
Here.
Mr. Peterson.
Here.
Mr. Evans.
Here.
We've been added by Mr. Starr since the roll was taken. And Mr. Gray Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam Clerk, Paul just texted he needs the phone number.
Okay.
Thank you.
I believe I sent it to him, but I'll send it to him again.
Next item is Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Johnson, could you listen to Pledge of Allegiance, ma'am?
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, ma'am. Next item of business, the minutes of previous meetings. We have a bunch of them. Thanks to the clerk's office for getting those done so well. Appreciate it. The first one is item 4A, regular meeting of August 5th, 2014. Need a motion on that? In discussion from assembly members. Ask unanimous consent. See no objection, item is approved. Next item in front is item 4B, regular meeting of August 26, 2014.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any comments? Any objections to it? Ask unanimous consent. See no objection, item is approved. Next item in front of us is item 4C, regular meeting, September 9th, 2014.
Move to approve.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on them? Any changes? Ask unanimous consent. See no objection. That item is approved. Next item in front of us is September 23rd, 2014. I can get a motion from Jennifer Johnson and a second from Ms. Gray Jackson.
Second.
Any comments on the minutes? Any changes? Ask unanimous consent. See no objection. Those items are approved. Next one is October 7th, 2014.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Johnson, seconded by Mr. Evans. Any changes to the minutes? Any corrections, deletions? Ask unanimous consent. See no changes. Those items are approved. Next one is item 4F, regular meeting October 21st, 2014. It's moved and seconded. Ms. Johnson, would you? Thank you. Any changes to those minutes? Ask unanimous consent. Seeing no objections, that item is approved. Next one is a regular meeting of November 5th, 2014. Moved by Ms. Johnston, seconded by Ms. Gray Jackson. Any changes, deletions? Ask unanimous consent. Seeing no objection, that item is approved, Madam Clerk. Next item is 14H.
Move to approve.
Second.
That was November 14th. It was moved by Mr. Evans, second by Ms. Gray Jackson. Any changes or deletions to it? Ask unanimous consent. See no objection. That item is approved. Next one is 4I. It's a regular meeting December 2nd, 2014.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Johnson, second by Mr. Evans. Is there any change or deletions? Ask unanimous consent. Seeing no changes, that item is approved by the body. The final one is our meeting of December 16th, 2014.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Ms. Johnston, second by Mr. Evans. Any changes or deletions?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
no changes, but before we move on, I would just like to take a moment to thank the municipal clerk and her staff for getting all the minutes done. We're starting fresh, and we really appreciate that, so thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're very welcome through the chair and all the members, and I'd like to give the credit to our new minutes clerk, Kimberly McCarty. She's talking to the security guard right now, but Kimberly's just done an awesome job in the month that she's been in our office. She got us all caught up. So thanks a lot to Kimberly. Yes. The chair reminded me that our minutes clerk is only a part-time employee. She only works 20 hours a week, and she's still got all of the minutes caught up for us. So we're really thrilled to have her.
Kimberly, thanks on behalf of the Assembly. You did a great job for us. We appreciate it. Thank you, ma'am. Ask unanimous consent. See no objection. That item is approved by the body. Now we're down to the Mayor's report. Mr. Mayor is not here. Mr. Michaelis, sir.
Thank you, sir. Mayor Sullivan has no report to render this evening.
Okay. Where's he at now? Is he out traveling?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We now have Assembly Chair's report. I've got one I need to read to you. Let's see. Here it is. I wanted to point out that there are 3 items on the agenda that deal with the Marston Drive and Folker Drive special assessments at 14H, 14.9, 14J. It's AR 2014-193, 2014-194, 2014-195. It's my intent to open the public hearing on these items, but I will ask the body to entertain a motion to continue the public hearings on these items until March 3rd. The findings of fact and conclusion of law are on the Eberhardt versus MOA quasi-judicial hearing will be completed and distributed to the Marston 4-acre property owners before the continued public hearing. The property owners and the public may wish to review these findings before testifying on these matters. If you testify tonight, you will not be able to testify at the continued public hearing. So I'll tell the public that tonight, too, when we get to it. And as chairman, I've had a bunch of work sessions that are scheduled. So the clerk's office will be letting you know about them because we have some things coming up. I really want to make sure we've got adequate work sessions to deal with them. So that's where we're at on that. Committee reports. Mr. Hall, I'll start with you, sir.
No, thank you.
How's our marijuana task force doing, sir?
We are doing fine. As a matter of fact, we sent a notice out today. We've had to do a bit of an adjustment on our calendar because of conflicting with other committees. And the notice will go out for the date. I think we settled on the second Wednesday of each month at noon. But that'll go out. And then we've got one meeting on the 22nd at 12:30 this month that we will have Cindy Franklin in attendance. We intend to have the deputy chief, a number of individuals that are attending the conference in Colorado to come and share with us their findings.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Starr, sir.
From audit, draft audit plan was submitted and is out for circulation. Perhaps some comments by tomorrow if you can look at that. It's not critical that we absolutely have it, but it sure gives Mr. Rusk some direction on how to proceed forward. I met the principal from the SAP audit group that's here with the work sessions scheduled for the 13th of February. For some SAP conversations through the audit committee on that committee of the whole for the audit on that. And other than that, we're good to go with the CAFR audits have started in collection of that data for the annual financial report. So all seems to be well.
Thank you, Mr. Starr. Mr. Steele, sir.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to let you know on the 22nd, the Enterprise Committee will be meeting 11 to 12:30. Here the quarterly reports from the port, ML&P, and also hear from Solid Waste Services. Later in that same day, at 1:30 on Thursday, the 22nd, AMAT's Policy Committee also meets. So.
Good. Thank you, sir. Mr. Evans, sir.
Nothing to report, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Budget and Finance Committee will be meeting on Thursday from noon to 1. We're not going to be able to meet in our conference room because it's taken, but we'll know ahead of time what conference room we're going to be meeting in. And the Budget Advisory Commission, a group of them did some work on property tax exemptions, and I'm hopeful that they'll be able to give us a presentation at our meeting on Thursday. And if not Thursday, it'll be next month. And I also want to say that Ms. Dombrowski and I were fortunate to attend a meeting with the Assembly's independent contractor who's doing the independent review of SAP, and we were very, very impressed, and we feel really assuring going forward. And he looks like Mr. Vakala sitting over there. But anyway, we really appreciated the opportunity to have a conversation with him, and we look forward to a report. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Flynn, sir. Ms. Dombrowski.
No report, sir.
Ms. Johnston.
Yes, the Title 21 Committee met yesterday, and this is our second meeting as far as looking at ways to address any concerns as far as high-density housing. We have our first draft of some of the corrections that we're looking at making that came out of the workshop that staff did and our two meetings. One of the issues, one of our high-density residential builders said that costs of doing business here can be up to 47% more than it is in the lower 48, and we're trying to decide how much of that is just given costs that we have nothing to do with, how much of it is due to code, and, if we are interested in making any adjustments. Otherwise, I'm in my new digs. I understand there's a hearing problem here, so if it's a hearing or a listening problem, I'm not sure which. If it's a hearing problem, if I fall asleep at the wheel, you know why.
Ms. Dombrowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to repeat the conversation you and I had this afternoon,
Yes.
The chairman trainee has asked that I not do disclosures at every single meeting for every ancillary item related to the fire department. So I've asked that he, on the record, give me let me participate. So I will make this disclosure. Mr. Chairman, my husband is a member of IAFF Local 1264 and is a captain with the Anchorage Fire Department. At this point, the only item that the Assembly has ever told me I cannot participate in is actually voting on his contract. Ancillary matters relating to reports, fixing things at the fire department, buying apparatus, those types of items I've always been excused from, but I make that disclosure so you and the body can rule on any potential conflicts, and if you mean for it to stand in perpetuity, please make that known.
Ma'am, I appreciate Mr. Flynn's guidance on this when he was chairman. It continues. You do not need to come forward on every single meeting with small things like the breathing apparatus, which is important to them, but it's not going to affect his salary. Now, if it deals with his contract as union member, then you'll have to do what I do because my wife's a teacher. But believe me, her salary does not affect the $800 million plus budget. I wish it did, but it doesn't. So please just...
So your ruling then is I do not have a conflict?
You do not have a conflict.
Matters? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next item in business is going to be addendum to agenda. If I get a motion to incorporate the addendum, I'll go through it. Is there a second? Thank you. We've been joined by Mr. Honeman online. How was Sitka, sir? Good. We'll go through this. It's 9B8 under resolutions for action. Other resolution AR 2015-15. A resolution approving a temporary regulation of the chief of police and traffic engineer under Anchorage Municipal Code Section 9.06.100A to address specific conditions regulated to signage requirements by AMC subsection 9.54 and 050A4 and allow emission of street addresses where towed vehicles may be retrieved when the contact number on towaway signs is maintained continuously and immediately responsive, and providing for a retroactive effective date of January the 1st, 2015, Department of Law. And there's an accompanying same memorandum, AM 34, 2015. Under new business, same memorandum, AM 31, 2015, Clapp, Peterson, Timson, Thorson, and Johnson Law Offices, Professional Legal Services Contract, Amendment Number 9, relating to Kennedy ETL versus MOA, $30,000 from the Department of Law. Item D 12, Assembly Memorandum AM 32, 2014. Excuse me. 32, 2015. Seaforth Shaw LLC Professional Legal Services Contract Amendment Number 4 to Port Expansion Litigation, $900,000 from the Department of Law. Item D15, Assembly Memorandum AM 33, 2015, proprietary purchase with Turbarun Incorporated to provide maintenance support services for the Anchorage Police Department Records Management System, RMS, and Automated Reporting Systems, ARS, and Computer-Aided Dispatch System, CAD, for the Municipality of Anchorage, Anchorage Police Department, $177,322 in Purchasing Department. Under Ordinances and Resolutions for Introduction, item F10B, the same memorandum AM 3-2015A, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly stating its protest regarding transfer of beverage dispensary license 4531 and duplicate license 4551 and 4552 for premises located at 901 West 6th Avenue, Anchorage, Alaska, giving notice of reasons for protest, and further providing for public hearing before the Anchorage Assembly on the exercise or waiver of this protest. Anchorage Assembly Member Flynn, public hearing requested on 1/27/15. Item F12, Resolution AR 2015-14, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly appropriating $192,877 of the Anchorage Center for the Performing Arts, ACPA, and surcharge revenue, Bond Fund 301, fund balance to the ACPA, surcharge revenue bond fund 301, Municipal Management Department in the amounts of $157,877 to be contributed to the area-wide Fund 101 for the repayment of outstanding loan and $35,000 for the payment of costs of issuance within the ACPA Surcharge Revenue Bond Fund 301 for the 2014 revenue refund bonds for the Performing Arts Center, RUF Finance Department, Finance and Investments Division. Public hearing requested 1/27/15. There's also a 12A, same memorandum, AM 30-2015. Next item on here is item F13, Resolution AR 2015-16, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly appropriating an amount not to exceed $127,162 from the area-wide General and Various Services Area SA Capital Improvement Program, CIP funds, from premiums on the sale of 2014 General Obligation Bond Series A for the payment of bond issuance costs in an amount not to exceed $125,923, and for their contributions in the amount not to exceed $2,239 from the same area-wide general various CIP funds to their respective area-wide general and various SA operating funds for future debt service payments. Finance Department public hearings 1/27/15. And there's a 13A, same memorandum, AM 35-2015. Madam Clerk, is there anything else?
One laid on the table, I think.
Okay. Do you have a number for that one?
I'm sorry, sir, I do not have a number for that.
Okay. I'll read this one forward. It's laid on the table item. It's 2015. There should be a number that will be put on there. What this one is, an ordinance submitting to the qualified voters of the Municipality of Anchorage a ballot proposition amending the Anchorage Municipal Code Charter to adopt an alcoholic beverage sales tax to dedicate the revenue to health and public safety uses regulated to alcoholic beverages, to allow use of the revenue to finance bonds for projects related to alcohol treatment, and provide for approval by a majority, 50% plus one, of the qualified voters voting on the question.
And that would most likely be item 9F, 14.
14. And public hearing on that one's going to be requested for 1/27, and then 3rd of February. And I want that one to go to, what? Yes, I want 2 public hearings on it, both meetings. And I want this one sent to Finance Committee. I want this to go to Mr. Honeman's committee, Public Safety, and I want Mr. Evans' committee to take a look at it if you would. This one touches all 3 boundaries. So could we have all 3 chairmen bring this up to their committee meetings? Just one response from him on it. Mr. Evans, his special. Oh, yeah. Anything else?
Mr. Chairman,
Sir?
what's that agenda item? I'd like to pull the sponsor as well.
It's 9F14.
Got it.
Let's vote now on incorporation of the addendum to the agenda. Madam Clerk?
So moved.
Third.
Okay. Yeah. Vote on the balance of the addendum to the agenda. Then move on to consent. Well, we could, once we incorporate, then we can get the consent when we pull all of them. Okay?
We're ready.
Okay.
So I am ready for you to start voting.
Okay. Please vote on the addendum to the agenda.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Did you get Mr. Holman? Okay. That is approved. Now we go to the consent agenda. I'll need a motion to consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Get a second? Second. Going to go through those items to be pulled for a little further discussion. Mr. Hall, sir.
No items.
Mr. Starr, sir.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, your guidance on 9D1, I didn't know if there was going to be a formal report or, I understand you're going to pull it, but I have a conflict, so how would you like me to disclose that, now or later? Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Steele, sir.
I don't have anything to pull.
Mr. Evans, sir.
Nothing, sir.
Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to pull 9 Apple 1. I would also like to pull 9 Fred 10 for the purpose of changing the public hearing date. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Flynn, sir.
Thank you, sir. From the addendum, item 9, Delta 12, to postpone. Or to make a motion to postpone?
Thank you. 9D12.
Correct.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Dombrowski.
9 Delta 1.
Anything else, ma'am? Ms. Johnston.
No, thank you.
Administration, you guys, anything pulled?
No, sir.
Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nothing this evening.
Mr. Honeman.
Mr. Chairman, 9F14, if I need to pull it for co-sponsor, if that's already been done, I don't need to pull it.
You don't need to pull it. We'll just tell the clerk to add you as a co-sponsor to it.
Okay, I don't see the addendum to the agenda item number, but AM 31-2015, the amendment to the Clapp-Peterson, I'd like to pull that, please, for discussion.
Mr. Gray Jackson tells me it's 9D11.
Thank you. 9D11 on the addendum.
Okay. Ready to vote on this? Yeah, I can do that. Good thing you're here. Okay, we pulled item 9A1.
Move to approve?
No, I'm just letting the body know what we've.
Oh,
list.
sorry.
Okay. I know, we'll get to it. It's my fault. And then we've got 9D1 pulled. 9D11, 9D12, and 9F12, 10. Sorry. Those are the ones. So please vote on the balance except for those. You ready to do it? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not there. I apologize. Do we need to pull 9 Alpha 2?
No,
Father Berger in?
no, we don't.
Thank you.
Mr. Honeman?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
That was approved unanimously. Now we'll go back to those things that pull for a little further discussion. Item 9A1, Resolution Air 2015-2, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage, the Anchorage Assembly, designated January 19, 2015 as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service, encouraging volunteerism and recognizing community service projects honoring the legacy of Dr. King.
Move to approve.
Second.
Ask unanimous consent. See no objection, item is approved. Mr. Jackson, you're going to read. Mr. Starr, you're going to present, sir.
Please join
Could
us.
the people join us up front?
A resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly designating January 19, 2015 as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service, encouraging volunteerism and recognizing community service projects honoring the legacy of Dr. King. Whereas, in 1994, the United States Congress expanded the mission of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day to include a National Day of Community Service. And whereas the goal is to have all Americans observe Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day as a day on, not a day off. And whereas the late Coretta Scott King said of the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service, the greatest birthday gift my husband could receive is if people of all racial and ethnic backgrounds celebrated the holiday by performing individual acts of kindness through service to others. And whereas participation in the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service has grown nationally and volunteers from across the country have taken part in various service projects such as tutoring and mentoring, preparing and delivering meals, building and repairing homes, schools, and senior centers, as well as teaching and reflecting on the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And whereas the municipality of Anchorage has joined in this celebration of public service and birthday by designating Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day as a day of community service since January 2008. And whereas it is of great importance that the community of Anchorage continue to join with others to honor the birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. with a commitment to serve. And whereas on January 19, 2015, the Alaska Bar Association, the Alaska Court System, and the Alaska Legal Services Corporation are sponsoring the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service free legal clinic, where hundreds of volunteer attorneys answer legal questions free of charge in communities across Anchorage and Alaska, serving hundreds of people and performing many hours of legal help valued at over $25,000. Now, therefore, the Anchorage Municipal Assembly resolves that January 19, 2015 is designated Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service in the municipality of Anchorage, passed and approved by the Anchorage Assembly this 13th day of January 2015.
On behalf of the MLK Foundation of Alaska, we graciously received this resolution by the Assembly, and thank you so much for so doing. I do want to take a moment to invite you and all to the celebration on this Sunday afternoon, the 18th, 3 o'clock p.m. at the UAA Alaska Airlines Center. That's at 3 o'clock, and on behalf of the foundation and all of its members, specifically Dr. A.B. Patterson, Jr., who served in this leadership capacity on behalf of the foundation throughout many years, and now it's come into my hand. Our theme this year is the color of unity, the color of unity. And there is a great transparency of heart, mind, will, and spirit when community members come together to effectuate productivity. And so that color is clear to all, so the color of unity is clear.
Sir, how many choir groups are coming in to sing on Sunday? I understand you guys are now reaching out.
How many what?
How many choir groups are coming in to sing?
We have a community choir, MLK community choir that's going to sing, and also we have a larger choir that's going to come in to sing. I think it's the Church of the Latter-day Saints of Jesus Christ has a large group that's going to sing as well. And we have praise dancers and cultural dancers by the Hmong community, and so it's going to be a great program.
Good luck to see you there.
Yeah, and our keynote speaker is Lieutenant Governor Byron Mallett. Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you. I'm president of the NAACP, Wanda Laws, and it's a pleasure and an honor, as always, when we receive this proclamation in Dr. Martin Luther King's honor. And it's also an honor to be standing here next to the president of the MLK Foundation, Pastor May. And again, I thank you for that. And I think that this was very timely, this proclamation where you were talking about community service. And, you know, as I do a lot, and I scroll through the many quotes that Dr. Martin Luther King has stated that was relevant then when they first came out of his mouth, and they're relevant still today. I mean, many things have changed, but his quotes, they certainly have not. They certainly are relevant in our life today. And I know that I'm paraphrasing when I say this, but it said something to the effect that you don't have to have a doctor's degree or a degree, or maybe you might not even be able to string a noun or a verb together. But if you can get out there and serve and help somebody and make somebody's life better, then that's what we're here for. You know, I ask all of you today, what has any of us done, if one thing, to make somebody else's life better? And that's what Martin Luther King is about, and I hope that that's what we're about today. I really appreciate it, and thank you very much.
Thank you. There are no questions from the Assembly. Thank you very much
Thank
for being
you.
here. Ms. Dombrowski, you've got the next item, item 9D1, same memorandum AM 1-2015, remand of Eberhard, First Municipality of Anchorage.
All right, just for the body before I introduce or move to approve, Mr. Starr has left. He's been excused from participation on this item. Move to accept.
Second.
Or it would be approve, I guess. Move to approve, sorry.
Second.
Thank you, Paul. Mr. Chairman, thanks. Mr. Chairman, there's a clerical error on line 20. I move to amend that. It is to change the date from January 13, 2014 to January 13, 2015.
Is there a second? Ask unanimous? Should no objection. That's accomplished, ma'am.
Okay, and so now the main items before us, yes?
Yes.
Okay, that's it. That was it.
I need just 1 second to catch up with you.
Main item in front of us, Mr. Honeman.
Yes,
Mr. Peterson. Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Gray Jackson, ma'am. The item is approved.
Mr. Chairman, before we take up the next item, I believe we have some people who are appointed to boards and commissions this evening.
On what, sir?
I said before we take up the next item, I believe we have some people in the audience who are appointed to boards and commissions this evening.
Who's here that was appointed to a board or commission? Thank you, Mr. Flynn.
Ms. Burrows, I know, is one of them.
Nikki, where are you at?
Here, I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
There you are. We're all familiar with Nikki Burrows. Back when she used to run the Federation.
I'm sorry?
Back when you used to run the Federation.
Right.
We're all familiar with you.
Long time.
Get our stuff into her on time, we were in deep trouble. Hi, Nikki.
Hi.
We appreciate you being on this board. Thank you very much for agreeing to do this.
Thank you for appointing me.
Anything you want to say to us?
No, other than now that I'm not an officer of my community council, I have a little bit of time on my hands, so I thought, well, I might as well volunteer for something else.
Well, good. We appreciate it, Nikki.
Thank you.
It's great to see you again.
Good to see you, too.
Sandy said to tell you hi.
I'm sorry?
Mr. Chairman?
Sandy said to tell you hi.
Thank you.
Mr. Honeman?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I just also wanted to extend my thanks and congratulations to Ms. Burrows. I really appreciate her taking her time and willingness to serve the community continually. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul, the next item is yours. This item 9D11, the same memorandum, AM 31, 2015, Clapp Peterson, Timmons, Thorson, and Johnson Law Offices Professional Legal Services Contract, Amendment number 9.
Mr. Chairman, I'll be a little reluctant, but I will move to approve this.
Is there a second? Move
And Mr. Chairman, if I might comment.
Mr. Honeman?
And I apologize, I was not able to make it to the work session where we had our last legal comment updates on lawsuits and legal issues before the municipality, and I don't want to speak out of turn in an open forum, but I do believe that we're approaching a point where we might likely need to set. I'd love to get a request to Mr. Wheeler in the law department to get perhaps a private brief to make sure I'm still in alignment of the executive session on legal, but at the same time, I'd like to perhaps help draft something up. Try to like to move this one towards resolution. Over $500,000, and I'm not sure what the exposure is, and I'm really concerned about it. So I'm a bit reluctant. I'll go ahead and sign on as I'll vote yes, but I'm concerned.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Mr. Wheeler is listening to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The case, as you know, has gone up and down from the Supreme Court a couple of times. We are now working on briefing in the Supreme Court regarding our request that the jury verdict in our favor be honored. In addition, we are looking at a mediation in mid-February with retired Judge Elaine Andrews. So we'll see if the mediation bears fruit come mid-February.
Anything else, Mr. Holman?
No, I'd like to sit down with Mr. Wheeler, but I'd certainly like to encourage the municipality to try to do its part to get a fair mediation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments on this item? If not, please vote. Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Honeman?
Yes.
Yeah, I know. That's why you're here. That is approved by the body. Next item in front of us is Mr. Flynn's. It's item D12, Mr. Flynn, sir. That's AM 32, 2015.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd move to postpone consideration of this item to our meeting of January 27. And if I can get a second.
Second.
And Mr. Chairman, I spoke with the Department of Law just prior to the meeting, and my expectation is we'll have a little bit clearer picture of the budget in 2 weeks, and so I'd like to hold off approval of this until we have that. And Mr. Wheeler, I don't want to put words in your mouth, so if you wish to comment on that, I'd welcome that.
Through the chair, we concur.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn. Yes, unanimous consent on delaying this item. Mr. Peterson, Mr. Honeman?
Yes. Yes.
That's approved by the body. Thank you, Madam Clerk. And that should complete.
I think Foxtrot 10, sir.
9F10. Ms. Ray Jackson pulled that one.
Thank you, Mr.
Next
Chairman.
item is 9F10, Resolution Air 2015-1. Ms. Ray Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move to introduce.
Second.
Second and third.
Third.
Mr. Chairman, I'd
Jackson.
like to change the public hearing date to February the 3rd to coincide with agenda item 9B1. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there objection to that? Should no objection, that is approved. That item will be in front of us on February 3rd. And unanimous consent of the body on that. That item is approved to be on the public hearing. And that should be the end of our consent agenda, Madam Clerk. Is there anything else I forgot?
Could you check to make sure that Mr. Honeman and Mr. Peterson agree with that?
Mr. Honeman, Mr. Peters, should you agree with the change on the date on that item?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Is that it, ma'am?
Mr. Chairman, we could take up items 11A and 11B.
We could. Let's move down to those. Item 11A is the same memorandum, 7/30/2014, Anchorage Community Development Authority, Board of Directors appointment. I don't have anything that shows as a motion on it, Madam Clerk.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion from assembly members? Okay, that's the two out there. Mr. Honeman, Mr. Peterson?
Yes, yes.
Okay, please vote on that item. Ms. Johnson, ma'am? Thank you. That was approved by the body. Next item in front is 11B, information. This is on AIM 151, 2014, Internal Audit Report 2014-07, Police and Fire Retiree Medical Trust 2-year review. Items in front of us.
Mr. Chairman?
Ma'am?
If Mr. Starr, who's the chair of the audit committee, would like to postpone this, I welcome him.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to need some guidance on your intentions on an item later on in the agenda towards the end. I certainly don't want to bring debate and public discourse into committee, so the idea on accepting the audit that's the basis of a future item is concerning to me.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Honeman?
Yes, I concur. I'd like to, if we could postpone this until the meeting after our item on, I believe it's F, the last item on the, and under item 14K.
Right, we're moving that one to March 3rd, 2015.
So if we could set this on the agenda after that, at least, and so we could also get some guidance and perhaps get some answers back from the Board of Trustees.
Okay.
Of the audit.
Yeah, I don't know how to get the answer back, Mr. Honeman, through the chair. So the guidance from the chair was sort of that, intentions on the feedback. The other thing is I would say, Mr. Honeman, your advice on the opportunity to have the information contained in the audit, however, is somewhat valuable. So if we don't particularly adopt the audit findings, it's hard to have a debate around them. So I don't know how you want to continue on talking about the audit plan from your perspective and comments on proposing delay after the item later.
But why don't we move to March 3rd and then just combine the hearings?
I can certainly move that. Again, I think that the acceptance of the audit may have some merit on the basis of the discussion. It is an independent audit finding, so, Mr. Chairman, so...
Let's move to March 3rd, and we'll deal with it after that.
Second.
Yeah, so moved. The audit for acceptance will be delayed until the meeting of... the acceptance of the audit will be moved to March 3rd.
That was seconded by you, Mr. Honeman? Mr. Honeman, you seconded that?
Yes.
Okay. Any objection to that? Not seeing any. Mr. Peterson, Mr. Honeman, do you object to it?
No.
Okay. That item is approved. We are now at the end of the agenda until we can start back up again. We're going to take a break until 6 o'clock, I think. Semi meeting back to order. Next item in front of us is item 14A. Item 14A is resolution AR 2014-331, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage, Alaska, accepting state of Alaska municipal matching grant per Senate Bill 100 and Senate Bill 2006 in the amount of $230,108 to be applied towards the Aspen Wastewater Treatment Facility Disaffection Upgrade Project from Anchorage Waste and Water. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward, spell your last name, state your record, clearly for the clerk. Anyone at all? Hearing and saying no one, public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Discussion from assembly members. Please vote. Mr. Honeman, Mr. Peterson. They both vote, man. Mr. Peterson? Yeah. That item is approved by the body. Next item in front of us is 14B, AR 2014-333, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage, Alaska, appropriating an amount not to exceed $120,000 as a contribution from the 2014 operating budget real estate department, area-wide general CIP Fund 101 to the area-wide general fund CIP Fund 401 for payment of principal interest on an interfund loan for the Eagle River Town Center real estate department. And there's a 14B1 with it. Memorandum AM 747, 2014. Public hearing on this item is now open. A motion to testify. Please come forward, state your name clearly for the record, and spell your last name. Hearing and seeing no one, public hearing on this item is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. In discussion from assembly members.
Not only that, Mr. Chairman, I appreciated Mr. Flynn's answer, or question, and I really appreciated the staff's answer. It was pretty clear and concise, so I think that wrapped it up for most folks on why we have this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from assembly members? Mr. Honeman, Mr. Peterson, anything from you guys? Okay. Okay, that was moved by Mr. Starr, second by Ms. Dombrowski. Please vote. Mr. Honeman, Mr. Peterson? What? Oh, yeah. You'll treat me one of these days. That was approved unanimously. That was approved by the body unanimously. Next item in front of us, item 14C, resolution Air 2015-4, resolution of the Anchorage Assembly approving an alcoholic beverages conditional use for beverage dispensary use and license number 4350 in the I-1 Light Industrial District for Coyote Santo LLC, doing business as Coyote Santo at 135 West Diamond Boulevard, Suite G, within the Martins Industrial Subdivision, addition number 1, tract 2A1, per plat 2001-72, generally located north of West Diamond Boulevard and west of King Street in Anchorage, in the Teku Campbell Community Council. This is case 2014-0178, Community Development Department, and along with it, there's the same memorandum, AM 4-2015. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. State your name clearly for the record and spell your last name if you would, please. Welcome, sir.
Dustin Darden, D-A-R-D-E-N. Is that sounds like that's that new building over there, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I was just wondering where it was.
Okay. That's where it's at, sir.
Do you know any other plans for that?
No, I don't.
Just the Coyote?
Yeah. We need to get
Santo?
your testimony, sir.
What's this?
We need to get your testimony
That was,
on it.
I just had a question, that's all.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it. Any other testimony, please come forward. Welcome to the meeting, ma'am.
Harvey, Harvey. I live right behind the building, and I'm not sure if this is the correct forum to present this, but with them opening a restaurant, this is my kitchen window. And so I'm kind of requesting, if this is something that does go through, that they put a privacy wall. This is now my view that they built the building. And this is what I get to see in the evening time when a car is in the parking lot. So I'm requesting that they possibly put up a privacy wall. They've planted some trees that they were required, but these trees will not grow in my lifetime.
Questions from assembly members? Thank you, ma'am. There are no questions.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to testify, please come forward.
Hi there, my name's Ed Larrivee, L-A-R-R-I, Visa Victory, E-E, I'm the second. And my question is, how much traffic? I mean, this place, Diamond and King Street, that's a lot of traffic. And, it's overflowing around 3 o'clock to about 6 o'clock. And with Costco there and all the other places, stores there, how much traffic is this going to increase? That's my question. Do you have any idea? And if you don't, maybe we should postpone this till we find this out.
Anything else, sir?
That's it.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's good seeing you again. You all have a wonderful day. I shall return.
Good. Anybody else wish to testify on this item, please come forward. Hearing and seeing no in public hearings, close. What's the wish of the body? Okay.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion from assembly members.
Could I just ask, are the petitioners here? Gallo, Mr. Gallo? Are either of them here for the Coyote LLC?
It doesn't appear as if there are here, sir.
No, it's not, and it concerns me just a little bit, but I don't mind that the expectation that we're just going to kind of, willingly approve these. I think there's always that intention, so perhaps through the clerk's office, if they ask should they be there the night of the approval, the answer might be they should be available for at least questions in the future through the clerk's communication.
I would expect their counsel to be here.
I would think so, too.
Madam Clerk?
Through the chair, Mr. Starr, these items are submitted from the Community Development Division, and it's possible that we may need to let the Community Development Department know to recommend these people to come. And the clerk's office can do the same, but I think since Community Development is working with the petitioner, it might be more appropriate coming from them.
Yeah, that's a fair answer. We've had some problems in the past with the folks knowing when their item was going to be on our agenda, and so we haven't wanted to get in the practice of delaying them until they did show up, but in some cases we want to close that loop, I hope, so that they can understand the seriousness of why we'd want them here. Thank you for that.
We'll take care of that, Mr. Starr. Other comments from assembly members?
Yeah.
I apologize, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Holman.
I apologize for not being there in person. I do know the business owner, and I know that as far as restaurants go, they've been fairly successful. So I think that being able to continue operating in the restaurant business area with alcohol provided, I think they've done a fairly good job of demonstrating that ability. So I do understand the concerns of the neighbors, though.
Thank you, Mr. Honeman. Mr. Flynn, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to responding to the couple of the questions and comments, it appears that the applicants authorized a woman by the name of Renee Johnston to represent them. I don't know if she's here, but if she is, Mr. Starr could ask for questions of her. And the other regarding traffic engineering department did review this, and they had no comment. So that's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn. Mr. Steele.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I'm hoping there's a way that we can either put a note on the conditional use permit or at least a note on the file that they need to get with the neighbors and make sure that screening is appropriate to mitigate disturbance of the neighbors.
Thank you, Mr. Steele. Other comments from assembly members? Seeing none. Mr. Flynn, Mr. Peterson, Mr. Peterson, Mr. Honeman. Voting on it, sir?
Yes.
Please vote. That item was approved. Next item in front of us is item 14D, which is Resolution AR 2015-5, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly approving an alcoholic beverage conditional use for retail sales of alcohol associated with brewery license number 5359 in the L1 Light Industrial District for Clap Liquid Industries, LLC, doing business as... Got any idea what that name is? We'll try her as Cynosure Brewing Company. at 144 East Potter Drive within Tulin Jacobs Industrial Park subdivision, Lot 5B, generally located north of Dowling Road and east of C Street in Anchorage. Taku Campbell Community Council, case number 2014-0192, Community Development Department. Public hearing is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. State your name clearly for the record and spell your last name, please. In this case, is the applicant here? Yes. Okay. Why don't you come first and talk to us, then we'll have the individuals coming down here, since you're the applicant.
Sure. Good evening. My name's Clark Pelz, P-E-L-Z. And I'm here to answer any questions.
Okay. So what are you going to put in there?
Excuse me?
What are you putting in there?
You know, my intention is to put a small brewery and tap room, capacity of about 40 people, opened limited hours.
Okay. Questions from Assembly members? Doesn't appear to be any. Thank you, sir.
Certainly.
Anybody else wishing to come forward? Please come down here.
Evening. My name's Hans Hansen, H-A-N-S-O-N. My grandfather homesteaded that area in 1949. I grew up in the neighborhood. We still own property in the neighborhood, so I have a vested interest in that part of the community. I only really got around to reviewing some of the applications and stuff that were on the internet today, and I noticed a lot of kind of inconsistencies, omissions, in some of the information that they had provided to get their alcohol board application and that kind of thing. There are, in their application, it says that, they don't note any schools or churches in the area, but in fact there is a church, a Hispanic church right across the street, less than 200 feet away. They did note that there was in another application, they said that there was a school 3,700 feet away, but Save High School is about 1,000 feet. So I noted a lot of inconsistency in their application that maybe needs to have a little further review before this is approved. Looking at some of the other issues, the parking, I think, is very limited there. He just stated that they have capacity of about 40 patrons, which, should require about 12, 13 parking spaces, which I don't see on their site plan denoted. So anyway, I just think there's still a lot of things that haven't been, questions that need to be answered before this is approved.
Thank you, sir. Questions from Assembly members? Doesn't appear to be any. Thank you, sir. Any other comments from the public? Welcome to the meeting, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Ingrid Hansen, H-A-N-S-O-N. Hans is my brother. I grew up across the street. It used to be my grandfather's airstrip, and I think it's great that they're making improvements to the road. However, my 82-year-old mother, who's in a wheelchair, lives across the street directly opposite, and she's terrified of public restaurant or brewery being across the street where they're serving alcohol. And since it was my grandfather's homestead, it's still very much an open area directly opposite, and there would be no reason why people that couldn't park on that side of the street trying to park in her driveway, and that's what she's afraid of. So like my brother stated, it might be a good idea to have a site plan developed and have some kind of assurance to the people in the neighborhood that the patrons would be leaving the area by, 8 or 9 o'clock at night, so that they would continue to have sort of a peaceful neighborhood.
Anything else, ma'am?
No, that's it.
There are no questions. Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else wish to testify in front of us?
Once again, my name's Ed Larrivee, Larrivee-2. I think that because of the one before me is concerned, maybe we should have signs there. Hate to say tollway signs, but at least no parking signs. Maybe that would, or a limited parking signs, maybe 2 hours, something like that, and that might eliminate some problems. But I'm all for a new distillery or new place that makes beer. But I hope it's cheap enough for people to afford it. Because usually when they make it up here, the average working guy can't afford it. We can just go in and look at the pictures on, on the labels. So that would be great if they had signs, though, to just direct traffic. And that's all I have to say. I can't think of anything else.
No question, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate testifying. Anybody else wish to testify, please come forward.
Dustin Darden, D-A-R-D-E-N. Sounds like a couple people are not looking forward to having booze whipped up in their backyard, so you might want to consider thinking about these individuals. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else wish to testify on this item? Hearing say no in public hearings, close. What's wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Mr. Flynn, sir.
Thank you. And I don't know who is the appropriate person to direct the question to, but I'm reading the traffic engineering report about requesting a revision to the site plan to accommodate parking issues. Mr. Weaver or Mr. Michaelis, can you tell me what resolution there was to that?
Mr. Weaver.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Flynn, on the parking issue, when they come in for the building permit for the change of use in that structure, traffic engineering will look at it and review the parking, and there's quite a bit of parking out front, different hours of operation, but they'll require the applicant to show there's adequate parking with respect to the tasting and the rest of the brewery portion of it.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Hall, sir.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make sure for clarification, because I know I've got a number of people that associate me with that location since I owned it for about 40 years. But I did sell that as of January 1 of 2014 and have absolutely no connection at all with the building at this time.
I asked him about that.
So you were the Ernest Hall I saw in the paperwork, huh? Thought it was somebody else, Ernie.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Mr. Starr, sir.
I don't have any questions. I'm urging approval, I think, for the idea that it's an I-1 zoned area. The road through Potter Road used to be a mess as it zigged and zagged and did a big S-turn, but that intersection through most likely good city planning and good construction design has eliminated that. And I've been to a number of these tap room type tasting rooms with the idea that they vendor specialty beers, and I don't think it's a destination bar. I don't get the sense of that. I feel compelled to sort of support the small businessman that heads out. He's going to have a couple $100,000 loan that's been disclosed in our packet, and I think his intention to be on site working hard to sell beer is an appropriate effort. So the idea that it's not an outside chain, that there's a number of protocols that can be managed to walk across the street and put the folks at ease, I feel comfortable that the vendor hears the message. I'm glad he's here, and hopefully we let him go off and do his business. That's what I would like.
Thank you, Mr. Starr. And there are comments from Assembly members. Seeing none, please vote. Mr. Peterson, Mr. Honeman?
Yes. Yes.
That item was approved by the body. Next item in front of us is item 14E. Item 14E is ordinance CO 2014-149, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly amending Anchorage Municipal Code Chapter 16.60 to provide for display of the USDA food guidance icon on all food service facilities located on property under the control or ownership of the municipality of Anchorage of Alaska. Brought forward by Assembly members Gray Jackson and Trainee. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. State your name clearly for the record and spell your last name if you would, please. Hearing say none, public hearings closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
It's been moved and seconded. Ms. Gray Jackson, then I'll go to Mr. Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's pretty clear what this ordinance is proposing to do, and it's pretty simple. The school district already does it. This assembly approved, on the mayor's, with the mayor's support, participation in First Lady Michelle Obama's Let's Move initiative to help fight childhood obesity. And we have a wonderful task force that have been meeting since February of 2013, and we have folks from the state on that task force, the school district, Mr. Trainee and I, state senator, and some others. And we're doing really, really great in our efforts. There are 5 goals with 3 medals that you can achieve in each gold: bronze, silver, and gold. And 3 of the goals we've already received bronze, silver, and gold medals. And there's, I think it's goal number 2, where we've already done some work, because the school district already has this sticker on food facilities in the school district. This will help us reach that goal, number 1. And number 2, it'll remind folks when you're going to a vending machine that, well, maybe I won't have that box of candy. Maybe I'll have that other treat that's less calories. But you'll still have it'll still be up to you what you eat. It's just a little reminder. And I already had a conversation with our purchasing director and administration. They seem to not have an issue with it because it really isn't any big deal. And I would really appreciate the support from our colleagues on this very minor effort to remind our community that, you know, we have a serious problem with childhood obesity, and we want our children to grow up to be healthy adults. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Evans, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I already spoke to my good friend and colleague, Ms. Gray Jackson, that letting her know I would oppose this minor ordinance. Well, she indicates it's, a very minor, small thing, and in some ways it is. It also, for me, is the end of Western civilization as we know it. And that's a bit hyperbolic, but not entirely. So I'll just get out my soapbox for a minute here and try to be quick. But I think it's important to understand in the broad picture that we live in a country that is $18 trillion in debt. $18 trillion. And it's a number that's incomprehensible, so we don't comprehend it. And instead we go on blithely spending the money of our grandchildren and great-grandchildren for ourselves. And we live in a state that has 750,000 people, but is over billions in the red this year. And it's not just because oil prices are dropping, it's because we tend to live beyond our means. And how that all fits into this pretty minor ordinance is because I think it all stems from the fact that we have a tendency that we've cultivated over the last several decades of making the government the answer for every problem on earth. And if there is a problem, we need to have a government solution. And if we don't come up with a solution, the government will go out of its way to find one for us. And that adds expenses to things, and it also kind of diminishes us, I think, as people, and creates that so-called nanny state. There is no hue and cry among the people of Anchorage, as far as I can tell, that they need better information in municipal facilities about nutritional items. I don't think they've asked us. I mean, I get emails about a lot of things, but I've never had anybody give me an email saying they really wish we would put, icons on vending machines, letting them know that to remind them to eat healthy. While it's a good thing, and I recommend that everybody eat healthy, and I agree that we do have an obesity problem in this country. I think that if you think that putting icons and reminding people to eat healthy is going to solve that, you're probably sorely mistaken. I think, and it's just my philosophy, and I know others have different philosophies, and I entirely respect that, but I think we're much closer to solving the problem of obesity in this country if the government would insist and remind people that they are responsible for their own health, instead of thinking that we have to create programs and create items like this that say the government's going to remind you to eat well, or the government's going to, remind you to click your seatbelt. I know it's kind of tilting at windmills to say this, but I believe that all the big problems we have in that $18 trillion is not going to be solved in Washington because the problems are so big, but are going to be solved locally by politicians and government officials paying attention to little things like this and drawing the line saying this is something we just don't need the government to add to. There's plenty of stuff for us to do, more stuff than we'll ever get to. And while this, is not going to break the city, it's not going to matter, I think the philosophy of it is important. So I will oppose this, and I would urge any of my colleagues who feel likewise to oppose it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Ms. Dombrowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had a quick question. I can't imagine there's a big fiscal note on this, but any idea what it is?
If I may, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Dombrowski. The King Career Center are making the stickers for us, and they're 4x4 stickers, and I was hoping to have one that I could share with everybody here, but 4x4. And it cost, we're paying for it out of the Assembly's budget, and I think it's like $500 for 480. Do you remember, Miss, what's your name again?
Jones.
$400? Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Thank you, Ms. Dombrowski.
Mr. Chairman, in the spirit of unity here tonight, I will pledge to donate $200, half the cost to the municipality of Anchorage, to cover that. And if there's any other assembly member that would like to take me up on that challenge, I would welcome it. But I will get online tonight and I will donate. So I will pay half the cost of this personally. Thank you.
Can I follow up, Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Dombrowski. I really appreciate that. And if I wasn't paying for my own business travel for so many years, I'd be willing to do the same, but I just can't. But I will be willing to donate $100. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Gray Jackson? Anything else? Okay. Any other comments, Mr. Peterson, Mr. Honan?
Mr. Chairman,
You donating money?
Go back and elaborate more. I do understand and I appreciate Mr. Evans' comments and perspective. I don't believe that government is the answer to every problem. I do believe that the government as a whole, and as representatives of all of our constituents, we can't put our heads in the sand and think that health problems and issues are not something that, for the betterment of our community, the health of our community, that we shouldn't do something about it. I don't believe this is an onerous task. I don't believe it's an onerous amount of money to ask of our, if you will, constituents and taxpayers to make sure we remind people of the things that they can and should do, probably do, including myself, to eat your way to better health. I think this is a decades-old premise that the Health Department and Food and Drug Administration has sponsored many years back, and yes, there have been some changes, and I think that we need to keep up with those changes. So I'm supportive of this and certainly willing to contribute if necessary to otherwise, but I do intend to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Honeman. Mr. Steele, sir.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I guess I need to ask how it's going to be distributed. That's number one. And I hear from people running coffee carts that we have trouble getting out on a consistent basis inspection stickers for the food that they produce at the coffee carts. I'm just wondering, I think it's more important to have have the facilities inspected and have stickers for the health of the foods that's being prepared there. Certainly just as important as reminding folks that they need to eat well. But that doesn't mean that we can't do it. If we get it out and it helps a few folks remember, then certainly the cost is not huge.
Thank you, Mr. Steele. Ms. Gray Jackson? Anything? Okay. Please vote. Mr. Holman, Mr. Peterson?
Yes. Yes.
That is approved 8-3. Next item in front of us is item 14F. Ordinance AO 2014-150, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly, amending Anchorage Municipal Code Section 12.15.015 to provide a municipal real property tax exemption for privately owned real property, rented or leased for use as a charter school established under Alaska statute. Brought forward by Ms. Gray Jackson and myself, actually. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward, state your name clearly for the record, spell your last name. Welcome to the meeting, sir.
Thank you. My name is Jeff Lentfer, Lentfer. I am a parent of 3 kids at the Rilke German Charter School. I've been involved with the facility side of it for 7 years since we got there, and in that time I've realized by the time you figure out what the problem is and how to fix it, your kids are going to be done, and it's kind of tough. We've been fighting facilities for a lot of years. The school's had rapid growth. We have about 450 kids now. I think there's a waiting list of kids trying to get in. Like 60 came in, and there's another 100 couldn't come in. It's a great program, despite being in facilities that are challenging. As a charter school, we understand that facilities are our responsibilities, but it's north of 25% of our budget that goes to facilities compared to an ASD facility that is doesn't cost them anything. We are looking for more of a level playing field, and by passing this, we can have a facility that does not have to pay property tax. We're currently in the process of building a new facility that will be ready in August that will house ASD students and have ASD faculty and teachers there. So it's not a private school. This is an absolute ASD facility. We're just trying to find a way where we can have our calculations about 100 to 120,000 savings in property tax. This is a new facility. It's not coming off the books. So yes, there are new city services, but this is not going to be a takeaway. The only takeaway currently, I think, would be a Winterberry Charter School. They're paying, I think, roughly 30 to 32,000 in property taxes. That is 0.0001% of the budget, and half that goes back to ASD anyway. We would love to be in an ASD facility. We've explored that with the school district for a lot of years, and repurposing and everything else, it is a political and tough thing to do. And while it's just not going to happen in our life, in my kid's lifetime at the ASD. It would be great if we could have a building, and I understand there's some concern that if this goes through, it might make it more appealing for charter schools to have their own facility. I can assure you, if we had a choice between a new facility that we had to pay for, a free one, we would jump into a used ASD building for free. So I don't think it's going to really motivate charter schools to stay away from ASD schools if that becomes an issue. This property tax, I think, is important that it is clear that it is a pass-through to the charter school, not a win for the landlord. And that needs to be our lease that we have. It states very clearly that we are responsible for property taxes, if any. And I think you got to make sure that it's not going to be a situation where the landlord wins and the charter school continues to pay a higher lease or rent on that. This 100 to 120,000 will go directly into our program. We've got some SBA testing or something similar to that.
Sir, could you sum up, please?
Please support it. Thank you.
Sir, we have one question for you.
Yes.
Ms. Johnston, ma'am?
Yes. What was your experience when you went to the school district as far as looking for school district facilities, and do do you have a feeling as far as what they have for, what their capacity is at this point?
I think that if, and this is just my understanding, I think that if you would take a situation and redraw the boundaries of elementary schools, because I think they're about 60 to 70% full, if you would say, okay, we're going to take all these and make them at 90 or 100%, there would be 1 or 2 elementary schools that could be used for charter schools. The process of that happening, who's going to tell a kid that you're not going to go to your neighborhood school? I can tell you how I think it could be done, but my kid's not going to the neighborhood school. So I think if you would to just take a political view of it and redraw it the best, most efficient way, you'd probably come up with a couple facilities. But trying to implement that would be challenging.
Okay, thank you.
There are no other questions, sir. Thank you very much for testifying.
No, thank you.
Welcome to the meeting, sir.
Thank you.
So my name is Dean Ball, last name is spelled B-A-L-L, and I'm principal of Rilke Schule German School of Arts and Sciences. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'd like to share a little bit about our school with you if you're not familiar with it. We are a German language immersion school K through 8 with 438 students. We're the largest single campus charter school in the state. And we were recently, as last year, we were designated by the American Association of Teachers of German as a German Center of Excellence. We've received several accolades, and I feel we're very proud of the teachers and staff and how hard we've worked in the school to accomplish what we have, despite being in a facility that we've been renting where classrooms are less than half the size of many Anchorage School District schools, and so we're thrilled with the news of being able to build a facility. Also, we are second year in a row, we're rated as a 5 out of 5 star school. And we have lots of kids on our waiting list. Lots of people apply, but we are not a rich school. Some people have a misconception of that. We have lots of parents who carpool. We have lots of kids that are on free and reduced lunch. So I'd like to combat that misconception, actually. I'm asking for support of this ordinance. A property tax exemption for charter schools will provide more equity in education for Anchorage students and their families. As you know, Anchorage charter schools are public schools. We're part of the Anchorage School District. Our teachers are part of the AEA and so forth. Rilke has requested space. We started this process about 3 years ago to house our students from the Anchorage School District, but taking a look at their demographic studies, for future years, we've learned that it would be 3 to 5 years before there'd be a possibility of a current ASD building to be repurposed, but at the same time, none of those buildings would be large enough to house us. And that's another one of the reasons why we've taken the initiative to build a school. Rilke Schule spends close to 30% of our operating budget on facility costs. This exemption would put close to $100,000 back into our budget for the students. I would love to be able to make use of these funds to have a daytime custodian, as I do not have a custodian. So I or the secretary are often cleaning up some of the messes. Charging charter schools property taxes causes an unnecessary burden on our schools, and there already is in a system in place. There's a system in place and a precedent that's been set for property tax exemptions for senior housing and for churches, and we support it, of course, for schools like the regular Anchorage School District schools.
Thank you, sir.
Any questions?
Questions from assembly members?
Yes.
Thank you for your testimony, sir. Oh, Mr. Steele, sir.
Yes, thank you for coming in. I know you guys have moved a couple of times and have been growing great guns. And I know you also get some support in terms of student teachers and things like that from Germany. And it's a great program. Has anybody had a conversation that you know of, and I don't know if there's anybody here from the school district or not, but they have listed here Family Partnership and Frontier Charter School, and given the number of students, they should apply. Does that mean that these homeschool programs will be able to use the tax exemption for their their office space, or testing space, or whatever they have. How's that dealt with? And I don't see it in the.
Yeah, I personally don't have knowledge of that, sir.
I'll ask that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Steele. Any other questions? There don't appear to be. Thank you, sir. And I'm sorry I didn't tell you this earlier, but you can sit down. I promise. We're not going to end the meeting before you testify. So take a seat, please. Welcome to the meeting, ma'am. Need your name and spell your last name, please.
Thank you. My name is Laura Demander, and I'm the former chair of the Academic Policy Committee, the parent body that governs Roca Shula. And I can answer Mr. Steele's question.
We do need you to spell it, please.
D-E-M-A-N-D-E-R.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Mr. Steele, the ordinance was specifically written to include family partnership and the other homeschooling charter school to include their space where they do their testing and training, because they do have a lot more than 50 students.
Yeah, they do, but the students aren't typically there. But parents go in there all the time, and certainly their administrative folks are there. I was just wondering whether or not it did. Logically, if you read through it, it's talking about the students being there, and that's not always the case, except for, I guess, Frontier has testing.
Ma'am, can we get you back to your testimony, please?
Okay.
But anyway,
I'll ask him questions later.
I'm sorry.
Okay. So wanted to address a few specific things. I advocated for this change with the legislature specifically because I was the chair of Roca Shula's board when we started this process of building the new building, and it just bugged me to death that we would have to pay property taxes as a school. I find that to be a wholly inequitable situation. The lease with the builder provides specifically that we as the school have to pay our property taxes. It's the same lease that Winterberry has and the same lease that Highland Tech has in their new building they're moving into at the beginning of next school year. We all use the same builder. We all have the same lease. So in order to make it an equitable situation with the other schools in the school district, it's only fair to not make us pay those property taxes. And if you look at the cost to the municipality, $113,000 is what we'll save every year on property taxes that we can put back into our program. And, the legislature was aghast at the idea. They had no idea that we were charged property taxes. And I hope that you guys are as shocked as they were at the idea that, your money that you passed through to us was coming back to you as property taxes. And I just, it's grossly unfair to me. And I'm happy to answer questions.
We have a few for you, ma'am.
Pardon?
We have a few questions for you.
Okay. It's the municipal funding formula, or the legislative funding formula, that keeps the district from consolidating all those elementary schools. So there's an incentive to keep elementary schools small and get more money for them. That's the reason that they keep the elementary schools small.
You done, ma'am?
Fire away.
Okay. Mr. Steele first, sir. Mr. Steele?
Yeah, there's other reasons that it's not just the school size factor.
Right.
It's also I was on the school board when we had to change school boundaries. There is no action by the school district that gets people out and upset and concerned faster than saying, "Oops, you're going to have to go to a different school."
Right.
You're going to have to,
political suicide.
Yep, jump on the bus or something. So that's it. That's the only thing on that. I know.
Anything else, Mr. Steele? Mr. Starr, sir.
One of the comments you made just recently was they give you the money, then we take it back, or some sort of relative statement about that. What's involved in the under contract with the Anchorage School District comments, differences? Like Grace Christian School isn't listed on this list as under contract with ASD, but calls themselves a charter school or a private school. Can you explain the nuance of what under contract with ASD really means?
We're a public school, whereas Grace Christian School is a private school. And ASD has regular neighborhood schools. They have alternative programs, which are like Stellar, Polaris, those schools. And then you have charter schools, which are operated as ASD schools. And the difference between us and alternative schools is we're governed by the parent-led governing board, the academic policy committee, and we have control over our curriculum, and we get to do things like choose our principal.
So does the paychecks for the employees get processed through ASD, or are those
Yes, sir.
passed through somewhere else then? And so clearly then ASD claims the student count inside yours for the student formula reimbursement from the state?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
But we get judged based on our size for the school size factor and stuff like that.
Correct, but the state still provides ASD a certain per student ratio for the number of students, in your case 376 or so. Thank you.
Right.
Anything else, Mr. Starr? Ms. Johnston, ma'am.
So if Highland Tech goes with the same builder, same contractor, and this passes, and currently they're paying taxes in their present site, correct?
I would assume so, yes.
And the school district is paying taxes in their current administration site, correct?
The school district is paying property taxes, yes. Mr. Abbott has confirmed that, and they would continue to pay property taxes despite this.
Okay, thank you.
That appears to be all the questions, ma'am. Thank you for
All right.
testifying.
Thank you, sir.
Anybody else wishing to testify, please come forward. See, I promised you would get to you. I promised you would get to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Deidre Watson, W-A-T-S-O-N. I'm the business manager at Winterberry Charter School. And I'm just here to urge this particular ordinance to be passed. Just a little bit more explanation. As a charter school, we're given allotted funds per student. And our entire budget has to come out of those allotted funds. So our teacher salaries, benefits, all of our curriculum for our children, nursing services has to be allotted out of those funds. So and also our building lease. We are in a 20-year lease, and we are also paying our property taxes for the next 20 years and further, of course. We're responsible for those. So that money is being taken away from any curriculum that we could provide our children, any more staff members that we could provide for our children. We are at capacity at Winterberry. We have a waiting list in every grade from K through 8. We're currently full with 240 students, and we have started a hybrid program to service more children. And we have about 20 children in a hybrid homeschool sort of program to try to open up to more students. But again, we are at our capacity. And so we are just hoping that this passes so that we can use the money for curriculum and for adding to our staff and helping our school grow, our students be able to have more resources. Any questions for me?
Questions from some members. Mr. Starr first.
That rate that you speak about that you get, is that given to you by ASD then, or is that mandated by the state?
The allotment is given based on the state number, but it is doled out by the ASD, Anchorage School District.
So there's no cut off the top per se that ASD...
There is a cut off the top. They do have a percentage that they take for kind of managing our payroll and those kind of things. Yes, there is a fee that they take off the top of that to manage.
You know, the private schools pay just outright costs for education. Is there an opportunity to charge tuition to your student users?
No, we cannot charge tuition because we are a public school under the Anchorage School District, and we do not charge any tuition, and we cannot charge tuition.
It's a broader-based debate, but is the question amongst the school structures ever considered to go private as opposed to public?
You know, I can't answer that question specifically in our school. I think that's such probably a road that would have to be navigated. Charter schools have been specifically designated under the Anchorage School District. to kind of have this route as an avenue to be more in control of our curriculum, have more parent involvement, but we still are under the greater guise of ASD. I mean, we have to follow the same kind of rules, testing, and they do make sure that we are adhering to our charter.
You have the authority to hire the teachers you want, though, under the hiring plan thereof, or how are you controlled there?
That goes through HR at ASD.
So you say we need a math teacher, and they send you a math teacher?
We interview through the same process any school would get a teacher, but they still have to go through and apply through the Anchorage School District and meet their criteria before that applicant is even opened up for us to look at.
And then those teachers, of course, then would be under the bargaining agreements and the labor contracts
They are.
thereof, and you pay the rates of...
That is correct.
I could ask Mr. Steele, or I could ask either way. But that's my question then. So your costs of labor and your costs there are mandated because you choose to be under that umbrella.
Absolutely.
As opposed to the private, who could negotiate their labor rates and benefit costs.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Appreciate your answers.
Sure.
Ms. Johnston, ma'am.
So if this passed, you would renegotiate your lease, is that correct?
We would not renegotiate our lease. Well, we would just based on this. Everything else would stay the same. But what is happening now is those monies are designated just to go to pay taxes. So we're actually, we write that check every year to make sure that the person we're leasing from is paying those taxes.
So it doesn't go through the owner, you pay directly to the municipality?
We do pay through the owner, but they designate those. It is designated that we have that particular amount every year of taxes is on top of our lease.
Okay, and do you have any other openers as far as your lease agreement over the 20 years, or is it?
Say that again?
Do you have any reopening, any openers in your lease agreement where you can go back and address?
No.
So it's a 20-year lease, and okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, ma'am. There are no other questions. Anybody else wish to testify, please come forward.
Good evening. My name is Ray Oakley, O-A-K-L-E-Y. I am a Rilke parent, also a Rilke spouse. My wife is a teacher there, so Anchorage School District. I've had 4 kids there. 3 have moved on to high school and 1 at UAA, and I have a kindergartner there at Rilke. So I have been involved in the facilities side of things along with Jeff Lentfer for these past several years, and I will continue to be for several years. This is a successful school. As we've discussed, we've outgrown our current facility. We're embarking on an ambitious plan to build a new facility. We have received support from the Anchorage School Board and officials from the Anchorage School District. Very much appreciate the support they've given us along the way. It has not been blank check. There's been a lot of back and forth. I've attended more school board meetings than I ever thought I would. But I do appreciate the support that has been shown there. And the scrutiny has made it for a better project, I believe. So I'm here to speak in favor of the ordinance for the property tax exemption. Charter schools operate at a disadvantage, based on the same pot of money, the same student allocation has to cover rent and, in this case, property tax, in addition to paying for teachers, paying for curriculum, paying for the utilities. And so this exemption for the property tax would be roughly $100,000 that would come back into the program. That's roughly the cost of a teacher. One more teacher in a classroom to reduce the class sizes or other program needs. It would be very significant within our budget. Our lease is written so that it's very clear that the school is responsible for property taxes. So if this exemption is passed, it will not go to the owner. The money will be returned back into the program. I guess I would just finish by saying that the state legislature demonstrated their support of charter schools by passing their legislation last year, and specifically saying the municipality has a chance to grant this exemption. Like I say, we've received support from the school district and the school board, and I would encourage the municipal assembly to do likewise and support all charter schools in the city. So I thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Starr has a question for you, sir. Mr. Starr?
The number that you're talking about in terms of the rebate, if you will, back to your group has been talked about. I've seen emails where it's been 120, 100,000 as you speak. I'm a little flummoxed on understanding, is that based on what your model is now or the anticipation of the new building rebate?
So right now we are housed in a church. So between the building being a church and then also being sublet as a school, there's no, Rilke Schule isn't paying any property tax right now. I believe it is essentially based on kind of doubling the size, the amount that Winterberry's paying, since we're going to have a facility that's roughly twice the size, twice the number of students. And
the assessed value is where I'm headed. Do you know what the assessed value of your new facility is forecast to be?
I have an idea about the project cost, but I don't know what the assessed value is going to be. That is on the order of $12 million. As I understand it, that's less than half of the bonded price for a school district building that might be built for a school of this population.
Yeah, I think the tax bill on $12 million is going to be greater than $100,000, however, though.
I don't speak for the assessors, and the building cost versus assessed value is not something I'm prepared to speak to.
Well, it's something we have to be cognizant of up here, that's all. So thank you for your knowledge base. Thank you.
Sure.
There are no other questions, sir. Thank you for your testimony. Okay. Anybody else wish to testify, please come forward. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. My name is Jason Storter. That's Storter. And I would just start, because I don't forget, if Mr. Starr, if you would ask me that same question about tax, I would answer some specifics on that. I'm the treasurer at Rilke Schule. I'm a parent at Rilke Schule, so I just want to open myself up for any questions that anybody might have. I feel like a lot of great questions have been answered already, so you might not have any more. I want to speak on facilities and ASD availability, because that's been asked. I'm not sure that it's been fully hit on yet. They are not available. The political reality of moving lines and emptying a school for us is not going to happen. It's just not. I've spoken in detail with the school board members about this, previous school board members, employees of the ASD, and it's just not going to happen. We've gone through the process for a few years now with talking with them, and there is no home for us. Rilke does not have a Schule at the ASD. It's not going to happen. So we made decisions based on, we're moving forward, and are we going to sublet our school and continue to, which we already do. We're in 2 facilities. Next year, potentially 3. We actually don't know what would happen, so we had to make decisions to move forward, and we did. The point of being at a disadvantage financially, I just want to echo that real quick, because we are. As a charter school, we do not, we're just at a disadvantage. We're going to be paying property taxes on our building, and it hurts. As a treasurer, looking through our finances, we're talking about my calculations are $105,000 a year. That's custodial. That's a teacher. We are on a financial system that is very strained. And that means everything to us. $100,000 a year is, it really is everything to us. So I'll open myself for questions for you guys.
Questions from assembly members. Mr. Starr, sir.
Well, I will. It's a tax basis calculation of that. Are you forecasting your new facility when you throw that number into the mill? I'm concerned that you've got a current facility that's out there with some sort of assessed value. I think there needs to be a little bit more science on the value gained and that. So can you expand a little bit on that?
Absolutely. I wish I knew that this question was going to come up, because I would have come with more details and specifics. I'm not an assessor. We have a professional commercial assessor on our team that's been heavily involved in this, as well as ASD financial staff and CFO. it has been shown, and it has been worked thoroughly to get an accurate number, and there is history that shows of assessing these kinds of properties, and they came up with those numbers based on that history in the municipality. That a built, or I don't know the exact terminology, I wish Clint was here to speak on this, but that number is very safe, the 105,000 to 120,000, and that comes from being researched by the ASD financial staff and lawyers, as well as a professional municipality living commercial appraiser.
And I should have probably asked some questions outside of this debate, but our summary, and it's not for your business, but our summary of economic effects, the forecasted amount of savings, indicates it's only going to cost the city $113,000 over all of the schools based on the summary of economic effects that we see attached to the item for approval. So I'm still trying to balance my budget in terms of just how much is this going to cost the coffers of the city from that. But the buildings that are in lease arrangements, and you're in one now that you pay a landlord rates and benefits thereof, he in turn somehow or another deducts the property taxes if he pays them as an operating expense to the building. Do you get into that discussion at all in terms of how much it costs you to run your facility in that game? Have you gotten there, or do you care? Because you'll own your facility outright, hopefully tax exempt, you won't have to even worry about it. I get that. But have you negotiated with your landlord the discussions that could occur if you don't get into a building of your own? And I guess I could bring back up the people that are ultimately going to lease from other facilities. So you're going to be in a unique class ultimately where you'll own your own building. You'll have it free and clear probably in periods of time. The other facilities that will continue to have a privately held property owned by a private individual or a corporation or somebody else, and they pay them lease payments, there's where I'm struggling with. So go in your current model, the one you pay a rent check to some landlord. Do you have a sense on how he's going to treat the tax exemption? He's going to have to rebate you money.
I haven't given a lot of thought simply because I'm the treasurer of a school that's in a church.
Yeah.
There's no property tax. We don't pay property tax because of that. So honestly, I haven't given it a ton of thought. I completely get your concern.
Well, it's a regulatory relationship later on, and I guess, I don't mind that. But the question, and I asked it to somebody else, and you're engaged in your board decisions probably as well, but has the conversation chatted amongst the board of should we just go private and be our own standalone entity and break away from school district oversight? Have you thought about that?
That conversation has not come up in any official capacity or APC meetings. I can tell you our school is not interested, and that will never happen, in my opinion. We are an ASD school. We're very proud to be an ASD school, just a bright star in the public education landscape, and many in fact, I just at testimony at the last school board meeting I was at, I had parents up there saying we are there and at this school because it is a public school and what it has to offer. We're a proud ASD school. We're not breaking away anywhere.
I'm not trying to get into that debate. It's just that it seems to...
I've got one more.
It seems to be that you have a handle that savings could occur in your facilities costs with a reduction in property taxes, but my mention would be that perhaps you see other gains in savings in benefit costs and labor costs and the other things by not being restricted by a contract with ASD. So, but you clearly don't have that debate going on, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Starr. Mr. Hall, sir.
Actually, Mr. Trini, it's my understanding we're going to postpone this for 2 weeks and have a work session.
Motion is going to be made, yes, sir.
My question, honestly, is too complicated to ask this evening. I'll wait for the work session.
Thank you. Any other questions for this gentleman? There don't appear to be any. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to testify, please come forward.
Once again, my name's Ed Larrivee, L-A-R-R-I, V as in Victory, EE-2. Tax exemption. See, I'm a property owner and I pay taxes. Now, where is the money? You know, you take so many beans off one side of the scale, you've got to put so many beans on the other side of the scale to balance it out. Where is the money going to come to cover this exemption? And now remember, this is 2015 where we're supposed to be on the big budget. What's going to, right now, we don't have a sales tax to take over, get rid of the property tax totally and have a sales tax of like 8 cents to the dollar. We don't have that. So the scary thing about this is, where is the money going to balance the scales coming from? Do you all have any type of plan to take, we're talking some money, I think, $100,000, that's a lot of money. Where's it going to come to make up for this? Basically, that's what I'm worried about. Now, if you had a sales tax and no property tax, you could always raise it a penny or something, and that would cover a lot. But right now, are we in position for an exemption, tax exemption, with the budget crunch? I mean, it just makes sense. You have to balance it out because you can't live, above your means. And I'm sure the state's not going to come in and say, "Hey, I'm your hero." No, I think they're going to be just the opposite. They're going to say, "Hey, let's pull the rug out from underneath you." So little red flags should come up with this. At least I'm looking at it for property tax. I'm thinking you all are going to raise our property tax to cover this. And that's basically what I have to think.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to testify, please come forward. Welcome, ma'am.
Hi. My name is Kjersti Van Wichman, VON space WICHMAN. Thank you to the Anchorage Assembly for putting this ordinance out there. Facility shortage is the #1 concern of charter schools in Anchorage. And property tax exemption for charter schools will provide more equity in education for Anchorage students and their families. We Rilke have requested a space from the school district to house our students, but there is nothing available that's big enough to meet our needs. This year, we have 60 students off campus. Next year, if we stay in current locations, which is not adequate for bathrooms, etc., we will have over 80 to 90 students off campus. We have talked to the school district for a long time about this. They have been very helpful and very forthcoming, trying to solve our issues. And the bottom line is that we have decided we need to build our own building, and we'll have to pay rent and lease to a landlord. And since we are going into a building that is not being owned by a church, we will have to pay property taxes. They're already precedent in Anchorage for churches, senior housing, that they are not paying property taxes. It's also precedent out in the valley. Charter schools do not pay property taxes. This is a huge chunk of money for us that we need to put back into the school district's children, which our children are, and our students and our teachers. They are all coming through school districts. Also, to clarify, talking about private schools versus charter schools, we lotter into our school. We don't choose who gets to go to our school. It's a lottery process like any of the other schools. Anybody in the school district can come to our school. Charter schools are very valuable. They provide a great option to the neighborhood schools. We're just asking you to please pass this ordinance. It will greatly benefit all the charter schools in this district. And charter schools provide options for everybody without costing any more money to go to school. Thank you.
No questions from the Senate. members. Thank you. Good timing. Anybody else wish to testify, please come forward. Open the meeting, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Tasha Lucas, Lucas. I apologize, I'm not dressed better. I actually hadn't planned on testifying, but I'm a parent of a third grader at Rilke Shule, and I'm going to tell you guys the same thing that I told the school board, that we chose Rilke Shule based on three things. One is that it's a K through 8 program, one that it's a language arts or a language immersion program, and the third is that they have a uniform code, a uniform dress code. So when we were looking around at schools and our son was ready to enter kindergarten, those were our three priorities, and Rilke Shule met all three of those priorities for us. Now that we've been in the program for 4 years now, I can tell you that it is an absolutely outstanding program. The teachers there are top-notch, the administration top-notch, everyone that works there and volunteers there, from the parents to the interns, they all believe in this school and they believe in the standard of education that our kids are getting there. So now that he's been there for a while, our son, he can actually interpret German for us. Like when things pop up on TV or in the movies, I'm all, okay, what did that mean? And he's able to tell me. And he's only 9 years old. So it's an absolutely amazing program that I completely support. But I just want to point out one thing, is that for us as a family, Rilke Shule is the reason we choose to stay in Anchorage. I work for an agency that has options out of state. I've had the opportunity to pursue supervisory positions in other states, but I start looking at their schools and I say, oh, what do they offer that's similar to Rilke Shule? And there's nothing. There's nothing that compares to the standard of excellence that this school offers. So not only do we choose to stay here because of Rilke Shule and pay our property taxes, but we're also involved in the volunteering, we're involved in the fundraising. So for us, it's really important that the Assembly supports this ordinance, because it not only makes our school more viable, but it gives all of the charter schools in Anchorage better potential for viability, and for maintaining the standards of excellence, not only in our school, but in other schools as well. And in all the headlines that I'm seeing recently with the price of oil and the fiscal issues that are coming up and the future issues that we may have in the municipality, I think this is a great option to draw people in, to say, wow, look at the kind of schools Anchorage has to offer. For getting more people here, getting more people to move here. So, I would hope that the Assembly would promote the innovation, promote the excellence, and promote the options in our school district by supporting the ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. There are no questions from the Assembly members. Thank you for being here. Anybody else wishing to testify, please come forward. Hearing and seeing no one, what's the wish of the body? Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to postpone action on this ordinance until the meeting of January 27th. And if I can just follow up a minute, Mr. Chairman, thank you. First, I want to thank everybody for coming out and testifying. I think this is a great ordinance. I think it's the right thing to do. That's why my name's on it. But our municipal attorney had some questions and some suggested amendments just to make sure that this ordinance does exactly what we want it to do. And Mr. Starr, I think, brought up some concerns. We want to make it right. So we're going to have a revised ordinance, and we're going to have a work session, and it's going to be back before us on the 27th. And I can't speak for my colleagues, but I kind of feel confident that it's going to be approved on the 27th. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Gray Jackson. Mr. Steele, on the motion in front of us, if you bring it up on the 27th.
I think that it's a good thing to postpone it. There's a few items in here that I would ask that we look into and clarify. Specifically, the dealing with the homeschool folks in terms of how that is calculated. I did not see a good item in here. One of the homeschool has an office space and has supplies and things like that there. The other one does testing out of that space. So I suspect the testing and all that, some of the space would be applicable to this. But this is a good ordinance. This does the right thing. we give tax breaks to private religious schools. We should give tax breaks to our charter schools. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Steele. Mr. Starr, on the motion to postpone the action to the 27th of this month.
Yeah, certainly, I think more time is necessary, and when I hear folks asking for additional information, so, on the record, I think if you can give me the math that goes into the SEE that's attached to this, not just the number, but the formula that came into the $113,000 for the first year. I'm hearing all kinds of other anticipations on one school claims $100,000 themselves, and so that's well over that. The second issue is perhaps the assessor can attend so that he can explain how with varying assessed values you're going to be able to have a level deduction contribution, because assessed values change, but the way the ordinance appears to me is that it's going to be a fixed amount, non-applicable every year. But I'm confused a little bit in that application of varying assessments. So I'm happy with the work session. Whether we can bring it back in 2 weeks, I don't know.
We're going to try, sir.
Thank you.
Ms. Johnson, ma'am?
Is it your intention to continue the public hearing?
Yeah. What? We should, yeah. That's the motion, is to continue this public hearing to the 27th, ma'am. Action on it. We could, we're still going to have it. Mr. Dombrowski?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm gonna support the postponement. I obviously support this ordinance because I helped write it. But I want to just let the many parents that have stepped forward that have their children in these ASD charter schools, I will emphasize these are public schools, that helped us write this, that gave us feedback. I just want to thank you, and I will let you know as soon as I know the time of that work session. I'll email it to you so you can disseminate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Amy.
Gentlemen?
Mr. Honeman?
Yes, I just wanted to potentially declare, I don't believe it's a conflict, but just declare that on this particular matter, I know it's likely to be postponed, and I would support that. My oldest grandson is actually a student attending Rilke Shula. I had no part in enrolling him on the charter school, nor do I have any financial gain or loss as a result of him being a student there. And of course, I'm very proud of him as being a student of Anchorage Public Schools as well as Rilke Shula, the charter school. And he too has learned a lot of German while he was there and trying to share it with his papa.
You don't have a conflict, Mr. Honeman. Your grandparent. Mr. Evans, sir?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm going to support the postpone. I also want to remind the body that tomorrow at noon, the Budget Advisory Commission is going to roll out its study of all the exempt properties in Anchorage, and I think that might be a bit eye-opening and a good part of this discussion about exemptions. I also would like to know how much Ms. Dombrowski is going to contribute to this on this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Mr. Dombrowski, anything else, ma'am?
Just one thing, it just popped in my head. Though it's not today, but tomorrow, my daughter is...
You have a conflict of interest?
Yes, I might. I don't think I do, but I think I might. Starting tomorrow, my daughter is starting work at Winterberry as a child's aide, like a babysitter. I don't know what you call it, but anyways, I'll just put that on the record. I don't think I have a conflict, but you know how I am about those.
She must like to have a conflict. It's great, Amy. We appreciate it. Please vote. We'll start with Mr. Holman and
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Please vote. Let's continue this item to 27th. That's approved. That'll come back in front of the 27th, and let's get the work session done and get the concerns you've got, Mr. Stark, because they're valid concerns. This SE was done by the Finance Department, so I think we've got some more questions to ask them now. Thank you, sir. No, we need to ask ahead of time. Send your questions into the clerk, and we can get them on to them. Mr. Hall, anything, sir? Okay. Next item in front of us is item 14G. This is ordinance AO 2014-152, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly, amending the 2015 General Government Capital Improvement Budget and Capital Improvement Program to reinstate the $10.5 million included in the 2014 capital improvement budget and legislative program to accommodate a greater Anchorage population and the growing level of use for indoor sports facilities. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. State your name clearly for the record and spell your last name.
Yeah, my name is Alan Clendaniel, Clendaniel. I serve as the secretary for the Alaska Tennis Association. I'm also the president of the USTA Pacific Northwest section, and I'm perhaps most proud that I'm the Bartlett High tennis coach. But I'd just like to say the Alaska tennis community understands that the state is facing a very serious budget deficit. We understand that the price of oil is low and that times are tough. But we're supporting this request because there is still a great demand for a public indoor tennis facility that will also have multi-use. Tennis is growing in Anchorage. Kids were packed in elementary schools this fall in Alaska Tennis Association and U.S. Tennis Association tennis programs. This spring, we're set to have 16 indoor sites for young children, which will be a record for introductory youth tennis programs in the winter. Unfortunately, as these kids grow into tennis and get older, there's just no facilities for them to continue playing. We're also doing great on the adult side for us old folks. Anchorage recently won an award from USTA National. Anchorage had the third most growth of USTA adult leagues in the entire nation as a region. You probably all heard the Alaska Club sold the Alaska Club North facility that had 5 indoor tennis courts, so we went from 9 indoor tennis courts to 4. The Alaska Club has told the ATA that they have no plans to add courts to their facility that has 4 at this moment. So with only 4 courts, the high school season was shortened, and we were barely able to hold regions and state. Tennis is a sport of a lifetime, and this community needs a place for affordable year-round recreation and a place for people of all ages from 5 to 85 to be able to exercise. So this is a worthy project. It's a worthy project when oil prices are high, and it's a worthy project when oil prices are low. I hope that you'll support this project now and in the future. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Questions from Assembly members? There don't appear to be any. Thank you, sir, for your testimony. Open the meeting, sir.
Thank you. My name is Matt Hemry, spelled H-E-M-R-Y. I am presently the Vice President of Alaska Tennis Association. I have also been involved with the public multi-use facility for some time, initially in the initial design effort. But first I want to express my appreciation that the Assembly continues to consider to address this need for the facility, even in these financially challenging times. I think Mr. Clendaniel has addressed the continuing need for the facility, and I won't repeat his points with one exception. I want to point out that I was tournament director for the state high school tennis championship that brought people from 6 different regions across the state, and it was really unfortunate when we went from the 9 courts down to the 4 that we had to severely truncate our tournament and participation, and for kids coming from all over the state, including Kodiak, they did not get the same sort of opportunities to participate they have in the past, and we're looking at having to even reduce that further. Looking at the available courts in the winter, the real losers are the kids. We used to be able to have programs where we had kids on all sorts of multiple courts, multiple instructors. Nowadays, that's down to essentially 1 court. So the real losers here are the kids, and the opportunities that we are really excited about for having a public facility and being able to open this up to people all different demographics and income levels and the opportunities they would have. But I am hopeful that by virtue of even having this continued discussion suggests there is still some level of consensus that this is a worthwhile project and would have a tangible benefit to our community. I also recognize that over the last year, there have been different ideas for pathways forward to a public facility, but the message we received last year, loud and clear from the Assembly, is the correct process is critical, and that perhaps that wasn't in place last year. I'm representing a nonprofit. We're not necessarily sophisticated in the political process, so we recognize that maybe we had some shortcomings there. But my hope is this year we can work with you to move this project forward using the correct process. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Starr has a question. Mr. Starr, sir.
I'll just remind you, this is a supplemental change to an already approved budget, so a little bit behind it. It's not a critique, but we're not quite following the budget submitted in October and approved, and so it's just clarity for that. But why not a private facility? What's wrong with the Tennis Association sponsoring its own facility and running it privately? Is it just not affordable?
That is an element of it. When the process started, we had an assortment of different potential participants in the overall project, including it was a public-private partnership. And at that point in time, we were still in the initial stages of the costs, and that's not totally my end of the project, the costs versus the fundraising. But unfortunately, and to be honest, the publicity that this generated made some of those the private opportunities less attractive to some potential participants.
Yeah, well, we've got experience with the public-private partnership out in Eagle River, co-shared with our libraries, Alaska Club next to it. Both are doing very well. Both have reduced rates. We have a land discussion going on that would require us to cough up some more money to buy the land from the landlord. But the public-private partnership that I would see would be ASD providing some land somewhere, and a private entity was able to build on it, so you could minimize the land purchase cost, which is usually a prohibiting cost in Anchorage because land is so expensive. So I just asked the question. I don't know. I see other private facilities. I just traveled to Fort Collins, Colorado. They got beautiful private facilities that seem to be affordable. I played at one. Mm-hmm. So thank you.
And just to follow up on that real quick, we are looking at some other opportunities, whereas the current or the last proposal we looked at, as you know, involved the Dempsey facility where the city has a land. We have some contacts, and again, some of these conversations have been dormant for a while, but we have some other potential opportunities where a private entity would provide the land if we provide the structure. And in fact, one of the projects we were modeling our approach after was successfully completed in I think it's South Dakota, using that same sort of approach.
Yeah, that's what I've read. So thank you for the answers.
Thank you, sir. There are no other questions.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to testify, please come forward.
My name's Ed Larrivee, hasn't changed, Larrivee-2. Are we nuts? $10.5 million? Where are we going to get this? And also, if we're going to be fair, this is Alaska. If you want to do inside sports, what about the outside sports? Aren't they worth anything? But when was it a major factor in government to sponsor sports? I mean, $10.5 million? Where are we coming from? We can't afford it. Basically, we can't afford it. I'm all for sports. I watch sports all the time. Not tennis, but I'm a mountain biker, and I mountain bike on the trails. I sure do. Are we going to spend that much on patching our trails we desperately need? No, because we can't afford that. $10.5 million, what are we thinking of? Anyway, that's all I have. Any questions at all?
There are no questions, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else wish to testify on this item? Hearing seeing no one, testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Mr. Hall, sir.
Yeah, this one is a bit of a heartbreaker for me because I will be a no vote on this. And as you all know, I very much supported the tennis courts when it was before us the last time, I felt it was a need in this community, and we had, some money in hand to do it. And we couldn't get a consensus to do it, to come together to make that happen. And we went from 10.5 to 8 to 7 to 4.2, and ended up with the legislature pulling the money back and reallocating it. And, honestly, there's no way with a straight face that I could turn and ask the legislature to come in with a $10.5 million of funding. Not that I think there's any outside chance that it would happen, but they ended up in a very uncomfortable position with where they were put last time that this was before them. I don't intend to turn and myself and poke at them with a sharp stick again, particularly dealing with the budget crisis that they're dealing with. So with that said, I support tennis. I was there for you guys all the way down the line the last time, but this just isn't the time. We've put $600,000 in to try to get coverage over 6 courts out at East High School. I would love to see that happen. I'm not even really over-optimistic in that regard, but on this particular one, regretfully, I've got to be a no vote.
Thank you, Mr. Starr. Mr. Hall. Mr. Starr.
I try to communicate that I'm not against tennis. I'm not against the outdoor sports that are priorities throughout Anchorage. I'm not opposed to the indoor sports that are through. It's a tough place for us to be when we have to choose between what our priorities are. Not last time. It wasn't that long ago. Our priorities were to fix up what we already had. I still have John Rada's list from Parks and Rec that talks about all the outdoor courts that need to be resurfaced, refinished, new nets, all the facilities that the Assembly toured with us. We haven't dealt with that. If it was packaged perhaps with a stronger sense that it was embraced by the municipality to build it. 10.5 was at some land that we owned off of Northern Lights. I just think it's, I could do it with a straight face probably, but I would do it better with a building plan, a modeling plan. We traditionally bring forward plans in the design requests first. We say, can you give us $500,000 for a site study for that, and then we go back another year later. We haven't done it that way. And so it's just time to have this song end. And so the idea that it wasn't part of the original budget, I didn't mean to be flippant and bring that up in front of a person testifying, but we didn't hash it out through the normal course of budget discussions. It wasn't brought to us by the administration and the mayor in that capacity. So I'm fearful that we're not fully engaged as a unity body to bring this thing to fruition. Lastly, I think ASD needs to step up. A lot of the testimony we hear is about the children in the schools, tournaments and all the other stuff. And, I walked the lands at West High with a model that would currently have put some land to use for a potential modification to current city facilities, co-joint facility, if those that remember that parade we had. But I can't modify our capital budget and go to Juneau and do the energy when there's other facilities, including this one, that need the money.
Thank you, Mr. Starr. Mr. Flynn, sir.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to try not to echo the comments of previous speakers. I think this is essentially a request to the legislature, and I think if we were taking a more rational approach to our legislative program, we'd be opening it back up and taking things out, not adding things in. If you've looked at the capital budget proposed by the administration, it's entirely based on matching federal dollars. There is not a single discretionary project in it right now. So this is not going to get funded, and I don't want to waste our legislative delegation's time, and I don't want to have to explain it if and when I visit Juneau. So, if we wanted to build this, Mr. Hall is right. We had the money, and unfortunately we turned this place into a circus and threw it away. Yes, we used it for some good things, but in the end we made, I think, a mess of it, and it's unfortunate. It's unfair to the tennis community. The reason I ultimately voted against the final resolution is because I was embarrassed by it. I really was. So I know folks want to make nice with the tennis community. I know they want to show their appreciation for what they bring to our community, but I don't think that I need to help you do that. So I want to vote no tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn. Ms. Dombrowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to start by thanking you, Mr. Chair, and Assemblymember Gray Jackson, because I know especially with Assemblymember Gray Jackson, she has an absolute dedication to process, and I believe this is a clear reflection of that. This is a process she wanted to make sure, I think, got right. So I appreciate those methods. But the same reason I won't support this now is why I didn't support this before, and I do think it's about priorities. As I'm thinking about what we have asked Juneau for, I'm thinking about road projects, I'm thinking about drainage projects, and I'm thinking about a very large port that has a very big problem. And quite frankly, I have talked to legislators and some on the Finance Committee who, quite frankly, this is not the right message for the City of Anchorage to send to Juneau this year, especially considering the financial situation and what happened last year. And I won't repeat what was said to me, but this is something I can't go to Juneau and defend. And I won't, because quite frankly, I would rather make sure the Glen Highway project that's halfway done gets finished. So that's where my priorities lie. It's with the basics. And I appreciate the discussion. I appreciate the members bringing this forward. And I won't be supporting it, but thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Evans, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess in the spirit of all the disclosures that get made here.
You play tennis?
Well, not very well. But I should point out that Mr. Clendaniel, who testified, is my long-time law partner and good friend.
And he's my son's baseball coach, so
And
I'm
it's
losing
true.
playing time for my kid tonight.
And I also know Mr. Hemry. Actually, Mr. Hemry was a sponsor of a fundraiser for me during my campaign. I'm very familiar with the tennis community. As a matter of fact, because of my connection with Alan, long before tennis became a hot-button issue at the Assembly and before it became a political punchline for the rest of the city, I got to watch Alan and that community go down to Juneau, lobby for the money, do all the things that group needed to do to support its interest, and, you know, from all intents and purposes, do it the right way. Then I got to watch the whole, you know, fortunately not on the Assembly, I got to watch the whole soap opera that was the discussion of tennis for I don't know how many months, and then the interesting fact of sending money that the state actually appropriated back to them. So it pains me, and I've already told Alan this, that I can't support this proposal. Not because, you know, anything that the tennis community did, or not because I don't think they make some valid points about what they need and what this community should support, but just because, you know, we've already asked for more than twice as much as the state has indicated it's likely to even put in its capital budget. It's not realistic. We can ask for this and make people feel good that, you know, make the tennis community feel good that we asked for it, but the reality is none of us, if we took a show of hands, nobody here thinks that the state is going to fund this anyway. What I'd rather see, if we are committed to helping this community, is to remember this and look for ways, you know, maybe Mr. Starr's public-private partnership, keep this body engaged in ways that can help this community actually achieve the ends of getting an indoor tennis facility. People who, you know, say we shouldn't support this because it's not a purpose of government, and, you know, I'm a pretty limited government kind of guy, so I see that point, but we do support a lot of other recreational facilities in town. And all I'm asking is that we be fair about that. Either don't support any of them, or let's be fair about which ones we support and try to spread the wealth around. So although I can't support it tonight, and I'm sorry, Alan, but I do support the concept.
Mr. Steele, sir.
Yes, quick and not so clean, I suppose. You know, we made a mistake last time in process, or a mistake was made last time in process, and it cost us big time in terms of credibility and in terms of heartache and in terms of disappointment for the tennis community. This was a great idea, and I applaud Ms. Gray Jackson and Mr. Trainey's, what they're trying to do in terms of get the process right, since the process still isn't right. But I have to agree with others who have said you couldn't take it to Juneau, and there wouldn't be any reason to take it to Juneau anyway, because you're not going to get the funding. It hurts our credibility more to go do that. But there are opportunities, and I hope we find opportunities. This segment of the community is going gangbusters in terms of motivation, and we need to find a way to help them get a facility. The East High one is not satisfactory, but it's something. The outdoor courts are something, but it doesn't help with the competitive tennis that they wanted. So I, too, will be a no vote, and it pains me to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Steele. Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First off, I'd like to thank the two gentlemen who testified in support of this project. And I'd also like to thank my colleagues for your comments. I took a few notes on what you had to say. I want to thank Ms. Dombosky, because what she had to say in regard to why we're bringing this forward is the absolute truth. And I agree with her. It isn't the right message. And I'll tell you in a minute a little bit more on that. And Mr. Flynn, he made a comment, folks want to make nice. Well, I really don't know what you're talking about, Mr. Flynn. And then Mr. Starr made a comment about, well, the mayor wasn't fully engaged. This wasn't brought to the mayor. Well, let me just let everybody here know what the situation is and why Mr. Trainey and I brought this forward. First off, before there was an oil crisis, and I won't bring up all the details with the tennis issue that happened last year, but Mr. Trainey and I tried to last year through the budget process is to do it correctly, and we put $10.5 million in the budget last year, not 2015 but 2014. There's a code requirement that says when there's a capital project in the budget, you cannot remove it unless the Assembly approves to remove it. So lo and behold, when we received the mayor's budget for 2015, that project was missing, and Mr. Trainey and I brought it back following the code. We were told twice that the Tennis Association agreed that the $600,000 to put covers over East High was all they wanted, and so Mr. Trainey and I were convinced that it was true, and so we made a motion to remove the project from the budget, and the Assembly did that. And then, once again, we found out that that wasn't what was agreed to by the Tennis Association, so we thought that the right thing to do was to have a meeting with them and see what they wanted us to do. And what they asked us to do was to put it back in the budget. And that is the effort that we are bringing forward this evening. And I just want to say, Mr. Trainey and I am speaking for him, we recognize that there is a crisis. We recognize that most of our projects that we're asking for funding, which may or may not be more important than this, are not going to be funded. But I've worked with this municipality long enough to know that there are oftentimes than not, more often than not, projects that are included in the budget as placeholders to let our legislators know that this is a project, we know we're not going to get funding for it, but this project is truly important to our community and the quality of life for the people who live in this community. So with everything that I just said, it would be a placeholder. We know we're not going to get that $10.5 million. We're not going to even get money for a lot of other projects that are priorities. But Mr. Trainey and I really wanted to follow a process and do things the right way, and that's what we've done. And with that said, Mr. Trainey, I have an amendment that I'd like to make just to, again, keep the project as a placeholder. And my amendment is to change the dollar amount to $1 million for site selection, land acquisition, and design.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Flynn on Ms. Gray Jackson's amendment, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to object to the amendment, not because I don't think it's rational, except that in speaking with legislators, appropriators, they have indicated they no longer want piecemeal appropriations for projects. They want complete projects brought to them. so that they're not on the hook for multiple years of appropriation. So I think this is inconsistent with their current preference.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn. Mr. Starr, on Ms. Gray Jackson's amendment.
Again, not to try to be insultive, I think we're trying to salvage something that the policy statement of the Assembly has been pretty clear on the comments to make, but I also don't like doing these items either. The title was published to the public under 10.5 million. That was the hearing. And now we're saying, no, we didn't really mean 10.5, only meant 1 million. So the context of the discussion is being changed to the amendment, and I don't particularly find that to be appropriate. Nor do I believe, again, that I would approach it by the land acquisition part of the amendment language that you just put in there. I still think that there's lands available that could be basically just free, or in terms of other aspects of lands that we already own. So land acquisition, perhaps site development, but I'm just not ready to go down it through this mechanism of modifying language when we advertise 10.5.
Thank you, Mr. Starr. Mr. Peterson, Mr. Holman?
Yes.
Mr. Holman?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to speak to Ms. Gray Jackson's amendment?
I support this process, but I actually had a comment on the main motion, but I can speak now, or I can wait until after we take the vote on this.
Why don't we vote on this, and we'll go back to the main motion, sir. Do you want to say anything about this amendment?
No.
Okay. Mr. Peterson, anything on the amendment?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And, I think the amendment has some merit. I do believe that it's going to not be funded no matter what amount we ask for, unless it's an extremely small amount. But I do support indoor sports facilities in Anchorage, so I will be supporting the amendment.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Evans, on the amendment. Mr. Evans?
On the amendment, Mr. Chair, I appreciate Ms. Gray Jackson's explanation of why this is put forward, and I think that's a good idea. I'm not sure I'm convinced that a placeholder is necessary. I think, again, what is necessary, if this body wants to support this group in its efforts, we just say we're going to do so and work on it through the year, see what we can do to help them out. I just don't think, the placeholder, while well-intentioned, and I just don't get the impression it's going to mean anything to our legislators. I don't think it hurts a lot, but it does, I think, asking for tennis money after what took place last year hurts a little. So I would prefer us to work with the tennis community, see what we can come up with, and not make a legislative ask this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. You want to restate your amendment, Ms. Gray Jackson? Okay. Whatever.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to change the $10.5 million to $1 million for site selection and design. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Honeman, Mr. Peterson, we're going to vote now.
Yes.
State to your clerk.
Yes.
Please vote. The vote was 4-7. It was defeated. That was defeated.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Honeman?
Well, I see how this possibility, I've been listening to comments, and I see how the possible vote will turn out not much different than what we just saw in the amendment. But I have to echo what Ms. Gray Jackson said, and I'll defer to Mr. Peterson, who formerly was with the legislature and understands the process very well. I recognize that both the economy has changed due to the price of oil and certainly priorities with the makeup of the Alaska legislature. But I know that going through years and years of attending many months of our community council meetings, and we certainly ourselves as assembly members have asked to prioritize community improvement, capital improvement projects for bonds and for Alaska legislature appropriations. For God's sakes, up in the south end of town, we ended up with a still very controversial football field that was appropriated, and quite often a little bit of local community input was lacking, and neighborhood communication conversations were lacking, and yet we end up with this money for a football field, and perhaps we can use some of that funding for something like this. I believe that sports and recreation opportunities for our entire community that benefit our entire community are certainly within the wheelhouse of municipal government, our Parks and Recreation Department. I'm definitely interested in community groups, and particularly sports groups, that take part of and pride in part of their operation and maintenance, ongoing maintenance of those facilities, because primarily they're the primary users. However, as testified at length by the Tennis Association and all its coaches and principals, that they felt that they had a great community effort to try to encourage more people to turn to tennis as a form of recreation for their health, and it fits right back to what we were going into with the initiative, the Let's Move initiative, with just the placarding, which is certainly a far cheaper prospect as putting the placards on. But I believe that we made a commitment to the tennis community and the community at large to follow the process correctly. I think Ms. Gray Jackson, yourself, Mr. Trainee, are right on the target here with this. We recognize the reality that not all, possibly none, of our priorities of our legislative packet is going to be approved, but that shouldn't stop us from making the request and putting our priorities in writing and submitting those as we do every year. And we don't. Since I've been on the body, we've never got 100% of the requests we've made, and it doesn't make us greedy, and it doesn't make us a bunch of askers at the request of a higher authority. It's our funding. Our money is part of a lot of different processes. It used to be municipal revenue sharing. Legislature has changed its course and wanted to parcel out by projects by priority. And this is what we're doing. We're identifying this sports facility, and not just for tennis, but tennis is certainly a high priority user in this particular facility, and we're identifying it. And so, without going any further, I support this appropriational movement on the ordinance as written. It needs to be included in our legislative packet as it was, and we were supposed to have had it in there. And we took no legal action. I don't believe we took any affirmative action. I could be wrong. Ms. Gray Jackson could correct me, but I don't know how it got out of our book. We were assured it should be in there. I think we should put it back in there. I believe we should stand with our community that this is something that we think is a priority, whether we get the funding this year, next year, or never. So I stand with my comments, and I urge support from my colleagues in the face of the challenges of our economic process.
We're now going to vote on the main motion. If both Mr. Honeman and Mr. Peterson will tell the clerk their vote, everybody else can vote.
Yes. Yes.
It's on the main motion. Again, the vote was the same. It was defeated. 4-7. Now, before we get into 14H, 14I, and 14J, Mr. Hall.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate a point of personal privilege. I'm confused by why these items are on the agenda. They're still in a quasi-judicial procedure. We've been instructed not to have any communication with anybody involved in this, yet we've got it before us for public testimony, and it seems there's a conflict there to me of the highest degree.
Ms. Dombrowski.
Through the chair, Mr. Hall, these were initially noticed for this time when we originally had the hearing scheduled for a different date. And once we caught that it was on the agenda for right now, the agenda had already been published last time. They had already been introduced. So through process, we figured we had two options. Option number one would be just to open the public hearing and let people know that we are still in the middle of proceedings and there's going to be a lot more information, and encourage them to wait. Or option number two is, even after there's publicly notice, just don't open the hearing and push it back. But we've not done that before. So, Barbara, am I saying this well?
Ms. Dombrowski, through the chair, Mr. Hall, the alternative when we discovered that these public hearings were set back in August or November. I think they were originally in August, and then they were changed to November, and then in November you changed them to January. So the issue would have been, in December, you would have had to have held a special meeting to change the public hearing dates. And in the alternative of holding a special meeting to change the public hearing dates, We did what Ms. Dombrowski just discussed. We just, they're on the schedule for today. It has to be open today.
Mr. Hall, sir?
Yes, I guess the question would be to our legal department, what position does this put us in at this point? I mean, I'm not allowed to have discussion with any of the individuals. I don't see anybody here. But what does it do to this if somebody actually chooses to testify?
Mr. Wheeler, sir?
No. Mr. Wheeler can't. I don't think he can.
Mr. Dombrowski.
Sorry. So the assembly through the clerk's office, as well as myself, have had discussions with Special Counsel Joe Levesque on this matter, and we are not. This is a publicly noticed event. We're not in any danger of hurting the quasi-judicial procedures. If that's where you're going, Mr. Hall, and I think that's where you're going. We're fine. But Mr. Wheeler is obviously he represents the municipality, which is a party in this, so I ask him not to comment on that, because I don't think it's appropriate. Sorry, I'll rely on Mr. Levesque for that. And like I said, I personally think this is fine. And through the conversations we've had through the clerk's office, this is the route we've chosen to take. So,
Mr. Hall?
If anyone comes to lecture, sir, just plug your ears.
Ms. Dombrowski, why don't you make a motion to combine the public hearing on all three items?
Yeah.
Then when we're done, we'll go ahead and move them, continue until the 3rd of March.
Okay, and as we have had this discussion, if there's anyone here in the public that wishes to talk on this matter, Mr. Chairman, I would just encourage them to wait until after the procedures have all happened, because there could be a lot of new information that comes out.
So why don't you make the motion?
So, Mr. Chairman, I move to combine the public hearing on AO number 2014-152, AR number 2014-193, and, AR number 2014-194.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward, state your name clearly for the record, spell your last name. Hearing and seeing no one?
Mr. Chairman, I move to continue the public hearing until March 3rd.
Is there a second? Second. Ask unanimous. Is there any objection to that? Mr. Holdeman, Mr.
No.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Chair, if the record can please reflect that Mr. Starr has left the room as he's been instructed not to participate on this matter.
What? The clerk recommends we should vote instead, so let me set it up. Please vote.
Continuing, I think.
This is continue.
Well, this is
March 3rd.
This says to combine.
No, we're already,
Oh, we can go to the next one.
we did the motion to
Okay,
combine.
I'm sorry, it just took me, just a second, let me correct that. I need new glasses.
We both did.
Oh, there
No,
we go,
it's
continue.
So we okay?
Just about. Okay, how's that?
Okay. So we moved to continue earlier, so please vote. Get everybody on there.
Mr. Starr is recused.
Get abstain
Yep.
from Mr.
I need Mr. Honeman and
Mr. Holdeman, Mr. Peterson.
Nice.
Thank you. That item will be continued to the 3rd. Now we're down to the last item, which is 14K. Clerk's notes, intent of the Assembly Chair to entertain a motion to continue the public hearing on Ordinance AO 2014-151 to March 3rd, 2015. Open the public testimony now. The public needs to keep in mind that this item still going to be will be continued to March 3rd. So if you wish to testify, please come forward, state your name clearly for the record. Spare your last name. Hearing and seeing no one?
Mr.
Somebody
Chair,
make a motion.
I move to continue the public hearing on this item until
March 3rd.
March 3rd.
Is there a second? Ask unanimous consent.
I have some questions about it.
Mr. Starr.
What's the expectation so we can clearly communicate to the public on what we're going to do with the topic between now and March 3rd?
We're going to have some work sessions, probably 2 of them, on this item. And the clerk will be sending you the date and time for the work sessions.
And so the structure of the work session will do what, do you anticipate? Should we have our
What it's gonna do
concerns
is
sent to you?
let us know, for example, the audit report on it, and get the information out to us on exactly what this means. Mr. Honeman?
Do you mind if I have the floor for a second more, Mr. Honeman?
Sure.
Here's my concern, is that the debate of the concept of what we're anticipating to do pull into the work session. And so I'm certainly amenable to having the opinion of the boards that are involved here presented at the work session or that, but I certainly don't want the debate to start over whether or not they think it's a good idea or here's all the drama that will occur if we combine or don't combine or move. So I have some practical questions on the item that could be answered outside of a work session, but I'm still concerned, quite frankly, as I talked to you, Mr. Chairman, about even bringing it into committee. The initial assignment was to discuss some of the audit findings in committee and let Mr. Rasmus discuss that, but that's sort of been negated now by the jump start of the action item in front of us that we're talking about right now. So I'm very cautious about how we approach this because I've been asked, and I took calls today on the topic, and I'm starting to release my opinion of what I think, and that's way premature, and I wouldn't want to do that before we have public hearing. So really delicately on this one is my suggestion, but I don't know what that looks like.
Madam Clerk, when's our work session scheduled on this?
Mr. Chair, I believe that you asked for this work session on February 18th. We do have a Public Safety Committee meeting scheduled that day from 12 until 1.
And Madam Chair, that can, or Madam Clerk, that can be, that meeting can be rescheduled or postponed if necessary. To accommodate this, I
Going back to Mr. Stern.
actually is similar to.
You got that? Mr. Starr?
Well, I guess, I see Mr. Brett's in the back, and some of the board members have contacted me. Their opinion is very valuable to me, and how do I get, without a public statement where I could ask Mr. Brett's a question in public, potentially it's almost like being under oath. What do you do? What's your time constraints? How much do you make? All of that stuff is valuable, and so work sessions where we explore that turn into less public, or we have restraints and constrictions about what we can do inside of a work session. So I don't know that a work session would come first, or if in fact we should open public hearing, flesh out the topics and get that debate on the public record and then move into it. I don't know the time is of an essence here. So I think you should contemplate it between now and March, because I want to send a clear message on why we're delaying it and what we're going to do in the meantime, as opposed to just have a work session where the pertinent facts are explained to us based on someone's opinions on what we should hear.
Mr. Chairman?
The clerk gave me a notice that we're going to have a presentation from the MOA. So, thank you, Barbara.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, we can always delay it March 3rd again if we hear the work session doesn't suffice. I'm fine with that, Mr. I'm not trying to be a pain here. I want to do this right.
And Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead,
thank you, Mr. Starr, for your comments, and let me just try and be as brief as possible, okay? So I think everybody knows that internal audit is required to review the medical trust every 2 years, right? And he's been doing that. And when I was chair in 2011, it was the same story, same findings. And so what I did as the chair, and the committee agreed, we established a committee, and that was somebody from HR. There were folks from the administration and folks from the police retirement, medical board, and the retirement. Okay, so that committee was formed, except we never met, and we didn't meet because the administration was frankly tied up with other things. So we never met. In the meantime, the medical trust folks, they prepared a document that never went anywhere because we never met. And it was my hope that we would, with the chair's concurrent, reconvene that committee and have a municipal audit committee and have both sides talk about the situation, bring back what they had on the table before, and probably work things out at that level. That was my hope. And we could also call it a committee of the whole, but I was hoping to have that committee reconvene through the Municipal Audit Committee, and then after that, an assembly work session to basically talk about how that meeting went. But that was my hope, but of course it's up to the chair and also the chair of the Municipal Audit Committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Oh, thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman, I've been in line.
I'm sorry, I'll come to you next as soon as I'm done with hers.
Thank you, Mr. Honeman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Starr, I requested that this be postponed, and I did so because since I think it was probably back in October, no, it was before October, probably September, I had engaged the board with exactly the concerns that were brought up in the audit committee, and they had a solution, and I brought it to Mr. Wheeler, and we were in discussions about it, and the intent was to let the board and the municipality kind of come together and address the issue. Unfortunately, the administration came forward with this without ever going to the board or even talking to them, and since this board was established as part of a settlement with retirement benefits, I felt, unlike what happened in AO 37, it would probably be beneficial for us just to take a step back, actually engage the board of professional trustees that are empowered and responsible for this medical trust, and just try to have a more collaborative approach. And just as exactly as Ms. Gray Jackson pointed out, you know, we had talked about it, and we felt like working this through the audit committee and trying to come up with an amicable solution rather than a contentious one would probably be in the best interest of everyone. So that was the intent. It was just to try to, it wasn't just going to be, you know, us telling them what was going to happen. And it complicates the fact there is a legal settlement and, you know, there are trustees. It's not just a cut and dry, I don't think. And I think there's probably 3 different solutions that could be at play here. And I think if we would have had a little more time to proactively engage with them, I mean, this was a new solution that I didn't see until it was introduced. So that was the intent. It was just simply to engage the board and let them kind of tell us their side, we hear the administration side, and then as a body, if we decide, you know, or after discussing with them, you know, if there's a decision made at the audit committee or wherever at a subcommittee that maybe this is a logical solution, then maybe we'd go with it. But it was just an attempt to try to engage the board, especially because it's a professional board of trustees.
Mr. Honeman, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll try to be brief and summarize. I believe Ms. Dombrowski and Ms. Gray Jackson have adequately given some background. I feel a little awkward that we're discussing, not necessarily debating, but we're getting into some of the meat of the issue here of what this ordinance before us has and some concerns. We haven't even opened the public hearing yet. Mr. Starr made a good point. Where are we going? What are we looking to do? And this is precisely the point. I also requested that we have a postponement of this ordinance and have a work session or 2 so that the administration can come forward and explain what their intent is behind this ordinance, and as they proposed and introduced, that it's not sponsored by any of the members of the Assembly that I'm aware of. And secondly, so that at another work session, if possible, I hate to bring it up, but similar to the AO 37 work sessions, we had multiple, if you recall, Mr. Starr, and members of the colleagues that were still on, to explain the complexities behind what I believe we're going down the wrong road. And that is that this whole entire trust was established as a result of a lawsuit and a settlement. So I believe we're treading in some potentially dangerous area, and legally anyway. So I believe it's very much adequate and prudent for us to, as a body, set this action aside, postpone it, have at least 1, if not 2 work sessions to hear from both sides of it so that we can have all the information that we need to make an informed choice, whether or not this is not the direction to go, or as Ms. Dombrowski said, maybe we take another action, or maybe we take no action at all and give clarity and direction to the administration to work out the issues. But in any event, that's the reasoning behind the postponement, Mr. Starr. And as far as the audit findings, I believe they did lead to some of the presentation of this ordinance by the administration. And unfortunately, I think much like AO 37, maybe they jumped the gun, maybe it's inappropriate. I don't want to get there at this point. So I think we need to have the work sessions, and I urge the support.
Mr. Starr and then Mr. Wheeler. Mr. Starr, sir?
Certainly, and I'm not trying to debate the merits. I want clear direction, but I certainly want to avoid any sort of or mismanaged. I'm not certain as chair of audit that I could referee clearly. And so I like the idea of a work session presented by the MOA, but I think clearly we need to have equal time provided to somebody else, whether that be the trust administration, the board, or whatever, if it becomes opinionated, which I'm fearful that it will be. So, Mr. Chairman, I don't want to overstate my concern about process, but certainly clearly spell out each party gets an hour or whatever, and we structure the debate so that then we also have questions that become able to be asked that aren't opinionated. If I ask a question on, what do you do all day to somebody that's there with the board, I don't want to be offended or allude to my opinion. So I'm really treading lightly on this. You've heard me for a week now talk about my concerns here. I wish the item wasn't in front of us because I'm getting comments, I'm getting calls from board members, I'm getting calls from trust administrators, people that are in the trust themselves with big concerns. So I don't want this to be a debacle in any sort of form on how we handle public testimony either. And so my fear is that we're going to have 300 retirees and trust participants line up at the microphone when the item comes back in front of us. I don't want that either because I don't think we do a good job hearing. So, either we do that. And lastly, let me speak, as we need to do something with the audit. Everybody refers to it, but it's not a public document yet. So I don't want to say by adopting the audit, I believe it's still an item for discussion tonight yet, but by adopting the audit that we agree with it or disagree with it, but it becomes part of the public record that's available to everybody else. And we've all seen it, we've all had a handle on it, but we're all talking about it and no one else has. So we have to adopt that, I believe, soon. Thank you.
Mr. Starr, we'll make sure everybody has equal opportunity at the work session and that the assembly members have opportunity to get the information they need. That's the purpose of work session.
We'll leave that up to you, Mr. Chairman.
We'll do that. Mr. Witter, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if all of the assembly members were in the loop on this, but we had asked or agreed to the extension as well because the Police and Fire Retirement Board wasn't able to take this up in December at their December meeting. So they wanted to have a postponement past their February meeting. I don't remember the date of that February meeting, but the Retirement Board wanted to take this up at their next meeting, and in February was when that was going to happen. So the administration agreed to that request and supports taking this up after the Retirement Board looks at it in February.
Thank you, Mr. Witter.
Mr. Chair, I could barely hear Mr. Wheeler.
Mr. Witter, could you say it again for a little louder for Mr. Honeman?
Yes, sorry.
Long way to Sitka.
Mr. Honeman, the Police and Fire Retirement Board wanted to look at this ordinance. They were not meeting again until February. They asked if we would support an extension to accommodate that. We agreed to that, and so the administration supports taking this item up after the Police and Fire Retirement Board meeting in February.
Thank you.
Okay, the motion in front of us is to continue public hearing to March 3rd. Please vote.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Point of order. Are we allowing public hearing tonight to open up since it was noticed, or are we just postponing without action?
We already did, sir.
Okay. Thank you. I did not hear that.
I know, it's a long way to Sitka. Mr. Honeman, Mr. Peterson?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. That item will come back in front of us on March 3rd. Next item in business, special orders. We have none. 16, there is no unfinished agenda. Audience participation.
Mr. Chairman, can we clarify? I thought Mr. Honeman postponed the acceptance of the internal audit on the item we just talked about. Didn't we have? So where is that on the agenda? We're almost to the end.
Postpone that to March 3rd.
March 3rd, that one comes up, sir.
So can I just ask, I hate to barge and be out of protocol with Robert's rules, but Mr. Wheeler, if we haven't formally adopted the audit report, I won't call it findings, the audit report, how does the public get to see it? For example, how does the board, the trustees get to debate it at their February meeting if we haven't formally accepted the item here? Mr.
Wheeler?
Ms. Craig-Jackson, I agree with you on that, but I would like to adopt the findings of the item. So if I can ask a legal...
Let's hear what Mr. Wheeler has to say.
Yeah.
Okay.
How does the public see it as a pending item, or do they see it as anything that we've even considered, meaning it's an independent audit item?
Through the chair, Mr. Starr, I believe some form of the audit was included in the Assembly packet, so therefore it's a public record. The issue is whether the Assembly's accepted the report. From my perspective, it doesn't necessarily change whether the Assembly accepts it or doesn't accept it. The report has been done by the internal auditor and it stands on its own. I don't know of any situation where the Assembly has ever redirected the outcome of an audit to require the internal auditor to change their findings. In addition, this is the third audit that addresses the same issues as Ms. Gray-Jackson pointed out. So the prior two audits and the management responses and the trust board responses and the meeting minutes from the meetings that we had on this issue are all currently available to the public if they want them.
Mr. Starr, anything else from Mr. Wheeler?
I mean, I'm almost tempted to reconsider the motion to postpone the audit to March 3rd so we can just get it out in front of the public and get printed copies available as an approved, accepted part of our public record. So what did Mr. Honeman do? Did he move it at March 3rd, or did he move it on the agenda to
Actually,
combine it with
Mr.
this?
Starr, I believe you and I both moved and seconded the postponement to the 3rd early in the meeting.
All right. Well, just, Madam Clerk, just have copies available that we can get to that. If I've got a lead and directed at a committee of the whole through the audit committee meeting, I don't want people going, well, this is the first time we've seen the report, and here it is, March 1st, and no one's seen the auditor's summaries, because I think it's very well done in terms of that. We've all seen it, Ms. Domboski, but
Thank you, Mr.
I want copies out there for everybody.
Madam
Thank
Clerk,
you.
Can you get us the other two audits that were done on the same thing and make copies of that to the entire Assembly?
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Honeman?
I just might remind Mr. Starr and my colleagues that, yes, though we have not formally accepted it as part of the Assembly packet, it's been before the Assembly packet many times, and that's been released in the public in the lobby, and it was online, so I'm not sure that, and the board now is aware of it, but they were not officially a part of the conversation with the audit, and I think that was part of the biggest concern. We wanted to make sure we had the findings and the review and some responses back.
Thank you, Mr. Honeman.
Thank you.
We're now down to audience participation. So anybody wants to talk to us about anything that's not on the agenda? Go ahead, sir. State your name clearly for the record. Spell your last name.
Dustin Darden, D-A-R-D-E-N. Did you say anything? I heard you say anything.
Anything?
Okay.
Within reason.
Okay. So,
Unless it's slanderous or libelous.
out of observation of the missing members and noticing you have computer screens and the recent technology we have with video cameras incorporated into all kinds of devices, just an idea of you to be more interactive with the missing members that aren't here right now. If they could possibly do a live recording and then you could see their face, it'd be more engaging, possibly, just an idea. And then also in the season of public safety, in regards to the innocent victims that are being slaughtered across seas and infiltrating our country at this time, that the people be aware of public safety and be on a heightened alert of vigilance of possible terrorists or people that would want to take innocent life, and to participate in gun safety with your family and have a good plan for what you would do in the event of some type of disturbance if you're in a public place or otherwise.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Anybody else would testify? You know you want to. Just come on up.
I do. My name's Ed Larrivee, L-A-R-R-I-V is a victory, E-E. I'm the second again. We need money. We need funding, because bad times are coming. And, we got to think of some ideas. I thought of a few ideas we ought to tax, but maybe a lot of people will disagree with me, but at least I'm thinking, at least I'm trying to reach out. One thing is, from our last meeting, I understand this zero tolerance thing that's going around with, BP and private organizations. They have zero tolerance, especially towards THC, where it's in your system, but you're not affected by it because it's been 3 weeks ago. we need to start taxing these people because they're starting to cause people not to have jobs. So let's think about taxing both private and public sectors. That's one thing. I mean, I'm reaching out. You know, I'm hanging from the cliff as a taxpayer. Another one is, have you ever watched TV and seen commercials on TV and you can't really read the little lines and it says, oh, this is on sale for $1. And you go there and they say, no, that's in Lower 48. It's going to be $2. Maybe we should think about taxing these TV radio stations because, you know, when I go in after seeing the commercial, I can't read those little lines. You know, they have the great big ad, and this was on local television too. This is local television. They have the great big ad, great big letters saying, for $1 you get this, for $3 you get that. And then underneath it says, you can't really read it. It's just a white line, it looks like. Maybe we should look forward to taxing these stations because it fools a lot of people, makes a lot of people mad. I'm sure it's made you all mad at one time. But we need to think of ideas to get more money because bad times, they're coming. And we got to be prepared. The storm is on the way. That's basically, if anybody else could think of any ideas, just as long as you don't tax the property owners. They're being taxed to death. I know I am. Oh my goodness, I shouldn't be paying that, but I do every year, you know, because I'm a diehard. I've been there for 20 years. Well, anyway, you all have a great night. Thank you all for being here.
Out there.
See you next time.
Anybody else wish to testify on any item? Hearing and seeing no one, public testimony is closed. We're now down to assembly comments. Any assembly comments?
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to announce to colleagues that as soon as we work out the work session dates and times, we'll reschedule the Public Safety Committee for this month. For February.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Mr. Peterson, anything, sir?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. We're in the executive sessions are none. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.